The box was heavier than it looked, and by the time I found Vanessa in the hotel suite, one corner had dug a permanent little grave into my hip. She stood in front of a mirror while her sister pinned something ivory into her hair. Around them, women moved through garment bags and flower boxes with the organized panic of people evacuating a very elegant building. Vanessa's aunt was holding up a crystal bowl. "It's gorgeous," Vanessa said, touching the rim. "We'll put it on the console in the dining room." I waited until she glanced my way. "Vanessa, honey, where would you like me to leave my wedding gift?" Her eyes touched the green paper, the cream ribbon, and then my face. "The desk accepts deliveries." For a moment, I honestly thought she was making a joke. Then I looked at my son. Daniel was standing by the window with his phone in his hand. He had heard her. I knew because his thumb stopped moving. Our eyes met, and I gave him the easiest chance a mother can give a grown man, the chance to do the right thing without having to be told what it was. His mouth tightened into that familiar, apologetic smile. "Mom, could you just leave it downstairs?" he said. "We're kind of buried up here." The women kept moving. Tape tore from a dispenser. Somebody asked where the steamer was. I shifted the box against my hip and said, "Of course." 8 months earlier, I still believed Daniel's apologies meant he was on my side. That sounds foolish now, but mothers are world-class interpreters. We can take 3 words and a sigh and build an entire cathedral of good intentions around them. Daniel had always been easy to forgive. Even as a grown man, he could stand in my kitchen with one cabinet door hanging crooked and say, "I was going to fix that for you," as if the thought had already earned him half the credit. The cabinet door had been crooked for 11 months. "It gives the room character," he told me one Sunday. "It gives me a concussion every time I reach for cinnamon." He laughed, kissed the side of my head, and went looking for the socket wrench Paul had kept in the hall closet. My husband had been gone 5 years by then, but Daniel still searched for his things, as if Paul might have moved them recently. The wrench, the good flashlight, the chili pot. Once he called to ask where his father kept the little level with the yellow ends. "In his toolbox," I said. I looked. "No, you open the toolbox. Looking involves moving something." There was silence, followed by the clatter of metal. "Found it. Your father just rolled his eyes in heaven." That's how I knew where to look. That was us. Or that was who I thought we were. We spoke every Sunday. He lived 20 minutes away and came by often enough that I kept the coffee he liked, even though it tasted, to me, like someone had described coffee to a cup of hot water. After Paul died, those visits had been loose and unannounced. Daniel would show up with a bag of groceries or a lamp he wanted me to admire before he returned it. We'd eat at the counter and talk about nothing that needed remembering. Then Vanessa came into his life, and the visits acquired start times. I liked her at first. I need to say that plainly because later everybody behaved as though I had taken one look at her and started sharpening my mother-in-law claws. Vanessa was smart, funny in a dry way, and so prepared for ordinary life that being around her made me feel as if I should locate the nearest emergency exit. The first time Daniel brought her to dinner, she arrived with flowers, wine, and a small container of unsalted butter, because Daniel had apparently mentioned that I sometimes forgot to buy it. "I didn't forget," I said. "I made a choice." She stared at me for half a second, then laughed. "All right," she said, "I may like you. You brought butter. You're already ahead of most people." She noticed things: the loose button on Daniel's cuff, the draft near my back door, the fact that the serving spoon for the green beans was too short and kept sliding into the bowl. 2 weeks later, she brought me one with a longer handle. Not for Christmas, not wrapped. She just set it beside my purse at a restaurant and said, "This was bothering me." That was Vanessa's love language, identifying a problem and eliminating it. I understood that. Mine was much the same, except my problems usually came with names and appetites. What I didn't understand yet was how quickly a person's helpfulness could become management. If Vanessa saw an empty space, she filled it. If she heard uncertain, she made a decision. If two people wanted different things, she moved fast enough that only one of them got to speak. Daniel found it comforting. His father and I had raised him in a quiet house, but quiet wasn't the same as decisive. Paul could spend 40 minutes comparing two nearly identical ceiling fans. I once watched him stand in the paint aisle so long that an employee asked whether he needed medical attention. Daniel inherited that softness. He hated disappointing anyone, which sounds like kindness until you realize it often means disappointing the person least likely to punish you. Vanessa never left him wondering what would happen if she was unhappy. The proposal came on a rainy Thursday in October. Daniel called me at 9:14 that night. I remember because I had just put my reading glasses on and was irritated that my phone made me take them off again. She said yes, he announced. I sat up so quickly my blanket slid to the floor. You asked? No, Mom. I called to tell you she accepted a package. Well, after some of your life choices, I don't assume. He laughed, and behind him I heard Vanessa say, "Tell her we're coming Sunday." Then her voice came closer. "Hi, Margaret. We wanted you to know before we tell everybody tomorrow." That touched me. I was alone in my bedroom with Paul's old cedar chest at the foot of the bed, and for one tender second the room didn't feel empty. "I'm honored," I said. "Your family," Vanessa answered, as though there had never been any question. Sunday, they arrived with pastries and a binder. I should have been warned by the binder. It was navy blue, 3 inches thick, and divided by labeled tabs: venue, catering, attire, flowers, photography. Vanessa set it on my kitchen table with both hands. "You've been engaged for 3 days," I said. I had ideas. Daniel took a cheese Danish from the box. She had a Pinterest board before she met me. It was aspirational. It was titled Vanessa and Daniel. She pointed a plastic knife at him. I changed the title after our 3rd date. That's much less frightening. I poured coffee and sat across from them. Vanessa opened the binder to a page covered in photographs of long tables, white flowers, and candles in glass cylinders. "We're thinking late June," she said. "The Ashford Hotel has that ballroom overlooking the river. Oh, it's beautiful there. You know it?" "Your father and I went to an anniversary dinner there once," I told Daniel. He complained about the price of parking until dessert. Daniel smiled. "Sounds right." For a moment, all 3 of us were in the same conversation. Then Vanessa turned a page. "My parents can cover the ballroom and catering," she said. "My sisters want to handle the bridal events. Aunt Lydia offered to do flowers, though we'll probably use a professional and let her contribute toward them." It was astonishing how many people had already been assigned. "That's generous," I said. "What can I do?" Daniel looked up from his pastry. "You don't have to do anything. It should have sounded considerate." Instead, it landed strangely. "I know I don't have to. I'd like to." Vanessa folded her hands over the open binder. "Honestly, the best gift you could give us is just being relaxed about everything." I smiled because I wasn't sure what expression belonged there. Have I been tense? No, not at all. She reached across and touched my wrist. That's why I'm saying it. Weddings can bring out expectations in mothers. Mothers specifically, and sisters, and aunts, women, really. Good thing men never develop expectations. Daniel swallowed a laugh badly and coughed into his fist. Vanessa gave him a look, but her thumb moved once over my wrist before she pulled her hand away. That tiny gesture made it difficult to decide whether I had been warned or reassured. She went on talking about the hotel. 200 guests, possibly 220 if her father's business friends accepted. A string quartet for the ceremony, small cakes on each table instead of one large one. Daniel ate another pastry and nodded whenever she paused. When she reached the rehearsal dinner, he finally sat forward. "Mom should do it." Vanessa's page stopped turning. I looked at him. "Do what?" "The dinner. You know, Dad's chili, cornbread, that salad you make. Something normal before all the fancy stuff." "Daniel," Vanessa said carefully, "we discussed a welcome event. It can be a welcome event. With chili. For 110 out-of-town guests?" He blinked. "That many?" Her expression said the binder had been wasted on him. I rescued him because that was still my reflex. I could manage something, I said. Not alone, obviously. We could rent the church hall or use the hotel's smaller room. Vanessa looked at me, then back at Daniel. I don't want Margaret working all night before the wedding. That's sweet, I said. I mean it. She should enjoy herself. Daniel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. See, she's looking out for you. I had not said I needed looking after. Still, I let myself be pleased. That was the beginning of it. Not one insult, not one slammed door. A series of moments in which I was told my exclusion was a kindness. The rehearsal dinner became the welcome supper. The chili became herb-roasted chicken because it was more universal. Vanessa hired hotel staff to serve it, but asked if I would make Paul's cornbread as a personal touch. I agreed. A week later, she texted to ask if my handwriting was still as pretty as the name cards I had made for Daniel's 30th birthday. Still? I stared at the word longer than necessary. Then she called. We're considering handwritten addresses for the invitations, she said. The calligrapher wants an absurd amount. How many invitations? About 175? My fingers already ached at the thought of it. When do you need them? There was a pause just long enough for me to hear what she had expected. Friday? It was Monday. I looked at the grocery list on my counter, the half-finished novel beside my chair, and the little square on the calendar where I had written lunch with Ruth. Daniel came on the line. Mom, you'd be saving us. That was all it took. It had always been all it took. All right, I said, bring them over. Daniel brought them at 8:30 that night in 2 white bakery boxes, which briefly made me think he had also brought dessert. Envelopes, he said when I opened the door. I can see that now. I brought wine. He lifted a bottle from under his arm. That's not dessert. It can be if you've had a hard enough day. Vanessa had stayed home to work on the seating chart. Daniel said this with the solemnity of a man whose wife was performing surgery. He followed me into the dining room and set the boxes on the table where Paul and I had once helped him assemble college applications. I moved my vase of grocery store carnations to the side. Inside the first box were stacks of cream envelopes. The paper was thick and soft, the kind that made even an electric bill feel important. Vanessa had included 3 black calligraphy pens, a printed address list, a sample envelope, and a note. Thank you for making these beautiful. Please follow sample exactly, V. The sample was addressed in narrow, slanted letters that looked like they had been trained at boarding school. Daniel leaned over my shoulder. Can you do that? I can write beautifully or I can copy a prison fence. Which does she want? He laughed, then caught himself. She worked hard on the sample. I'm sure she did. I touched the edge of the printed list. It had been organized alphabetically, with each household assigned a number that apparently matched some database in Vanessa's binder. You know, I said, when your father and I got married, his cousin Bobby called 6 people from a payphone and told them to show up at the Methodist church. How many came? About 80. To the wedding, to the church basement. I'm still not convinced all of them attended the wedding. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me. For a while, he watched as I tested the pens on scrap paper. He picked up one of the blank envelopes, rubbed it between his fingers, and whistled. How much did these cost? Don't ask questions that could damage your marriage. That bad? You didn't hear it from me. He grinned. In the yellow light above the table, he looked so much like Paul at 38 that I had to look down. It happened unexpectedly sometimes. A tilt of the head, a hand resting on a chair, the little crease beside his mouth. Grief was sneaky that way. It didn't always knock. Sometimes it used a key. Daniel noticed the change in me. You okay? Yes. Your face just did something. What? Got old. Thanks, Mom. He took the bottle into the kitchen and found the corkscrew without asking. That, more than anything, made me feel he still lived there a little. We shared 1 glass of wine because he was driving and talked about ordinary things. His office had hired a new manager who used the phrase circle back so often that Daniel had started marking it on a legal pad. Vanessa was interviewing caterers for the farewell brunch. My neighbor had parked half across my driveway again. Then he said, "Vanessa thinks you don't like her." My pen stopped above the test sheet. "What brought that on?" "The joke about the handwriting. She wasn't here." I told her. "Why?" He seemed genuinely puzzled. It was funny. Apparently not to her. She laughed. But then she asked if you were irritated about doing the envelopes. I hadn't done them yet. You know what I mean. I capped the pen and put it down. "Daniel, I like Vanessa. I'm getting used to the fact that she has planned this wedding with the precision of an air traffic controller, but that doesn't mean I don't like her. She just wants it to go well. So do I. She feels like people are judging her. Who?" He turned the envelope over in his hands. "Everybody, I guess." I waited for more. When none came, I asked, "Does she think I'm judging her?" "No. I mean, maybe." "Not specifically. Then what are we talking about?" He rubbed his thumb over the sealed edge, bending it slightly. "Don't do that," I said. He put it down. "Look, Mom, her family is complicated. That was all he gave me. Complicated. The great American family word, spacious enough to hold every secret while revealing none. I knew Vanessa's parents had divorced when she was in college and remarried each other 4 years later. I knew her mother, Elaine, changed the subject whenever that period came up. I knew her older sister, Tessa, could make a compliment sound like a performance review, and her younger sister, Camille, had once stopped speaking to Vanessa for 11 months over something no one would explain. Beyond that, I did not ask. Other people's families deserved some curtains. "Everybody's family is complicated," I said. "Your Uncle Ray still thinks your father left him stranded in Cincinnati on purpose. Did he? Probably." Daniel smiled, but it faded quickly. "Can you just be patient with her?" There it was. The first of many requests that would sound reasonable until I counted who was being asked to make them. "I can be patient. I knew you would." He squeezed my shoulder on his way out. At the front door, he reminded me about Friday as if I had suffered a head injury since the dining room. After he left, I poured the rest of my wine back into the bottle, which I consider evidence of extraordinary discipline, and addressed the first envelope. Mr. and Mrs. William Avery. The letters came easily once my hand found the rhythm. Pressure on the downward strokes, light on the curves. My mother had taught me cursive at her kitchen table and rapped my knuckles with the eraser end of a pencil whenever my capitals leaned too far. By midnight, I had finished 29. By Wednesday, the side of my hand was stained black, and the joint at the base of my thumb had begun to throb. I wrapped it in a dish towel full of ice and studied the list. Vanessa's side occupied almost 4 pages. Daniel's occupied 1.5. There were names I recognized from Paul's family, old friends Daniel rarely saw, and people from his office. My own invitation was number 146, Margaret Hale. No misses, no family designation, just my name and address, like a dental appointment. I told myself that was modern, clean, sensible. Then I noticed Elaine Bell's entry, Mrs. Elaine Bell, mother of the bride. I stared at it until the ice in the dish towel began dripping onto my lap. The title wasn't for the envelope. It was a note someone had forgotten to remove from the spreadsheet. Several entries had private labels. Father's business partner, Vanessa's former roommate, Tessa's +1. The labels were production notes, not honorifics. Mine had none. I laughed at myself, though no one was there to hear it. That was the danger of working alone late at night. A woman could turn a clerical inconsistency into Shakespeare. I addressed my own invitation in the same lovely hand as everyone else's and set it on the finished pile. Thursday afternoon, Ruth called while I was trying to remember whether a couple in Savannah had divorced. "We still eating tomorrow?" she asked. I looked at the remaining stack. "I may need to postpone." "You postponed last month. I had the furnace inspection. You reorganized your pantry while the man looked at your furnace. That wasn't a social engagement. I'm helping with the wedding invitations. How many? 175. Ruth was quiet. I held the phone away and checked the screen to make sure we were still connected. Did you faint? I'm trying to decide whether friendship requires me to tell you what I think. Since when has that stopped you? Are they holding the wedding at Buckingham Palace? The Ashford? Same number of bathrooms? I smiled despite myself. Ruth and I had met when our husbands worked for the same manufacturing company. After both men died, our friendship had shifted from couples' dinners to lunches where we split French fries and complained about our knees. They need them by Friday, I said. Who is they? Daniel and Vanessa. No. Who needs handwritten envelopes by Friday? I assume the post office. I'll come help. You can't do calligraphy. I can lick. The envelopes are self-sealing. I can sit there and make critical remarks that you can do. She arrived Friday morning with bagels and a wrist brace. By noon, all the envelopes were finished, and Ruth had made herself useful checking names against the list. Your own son made you address an invitation to yourself? She asked. It was in the stack. He couldn't pull that one out? It would have thrown off the numbering. She looked over the top of her glasses. I concentrated on an address in Connecticut. At 2, Daniel texted that he was stuck at work and asked if I could deliver the boxes to Tessa's house. Vanessa and her sisters were assembling the invitations there. I read the message twice. Ruth saw my face. What? Nothing. Change of delivery. She looked at the completed envelopes, the empty bagel bag, and my hand in the brace she had brought. You weren't invited to the assembly? I'm assembling them now. You know what I mean? Tessa's house isn't large, and it's probably just the sisters. Ruth picked up the address list and pointed to the names I had checked that morning. You're his mother. I had a very active morning. Maybe they thought I'd be tired. Did they think that before or after they gave you 175 envelopes? I wished she would stop. Not because she was wrong, exactly, but because once another person noticed a hurt, it became harder to fold it small enough to put away. I drove the boxes to Tessa's house at 3:30. There were 6 cars in the driveway. Through the front window, I could see women gathered around a long table. Elaine stood at one end tying cream ribbon around stacks of invitations. Aunt Lydia was pouring sparkling wine. Camille wore a paper crown that said, Bride's Minion in gold letters. Someone had arranged flowers in little jars along the windowsill. Tessa opened the door wearing a matching paper crown. Margaret, she said, you're a lifesaver. She took one box from my arms and called over her shoulder. The envelopes are here. A little cheer rose from the dining room. Vanessa came down the hallway with a glass in her hand. You finished them all 175. She opened the top box and lifted an envelope. Her face changed. Not dramatically. It softened. These really are beautiful. Thank you. She ran a finger above the ink, careful not to touch it. Did Daniel tell you we changed the return address on the response cards? No. Her eyes closed. Of course he didn't. For once, her irritation was aimed where it belonged. I'm sorry, she said. You did all that work, and we didn't even invite you today. The apology was so direct that it disarmed me. I assumed it was a sister's thing. It started that way, but then Mom came and Aunt Lydia, and people multiplied. She stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in. Please, have some wine. I could have entered. There was a chair at the table with no one in it. Elaine waved when she saw me. For a second, the afternoon I had imagined became available. Then Tessa called, Vanessa, we need to redo the count if your mother-in-law's adding names. Vanessa turned her head. She's not adding names. I was kidding. The room gave the thin, polite laugh people use when deciding whether something was a joke. I looked at the paper crowns, the open bottles, my finished envelope spread like place settings for people who belong there. I can't stay, I said. Ruth is waiting. Ruth was not waiting. She had left an hour earlier. Vanessa studied me as if she knew that. Before I could go, she reached into a basket by the door and pulled out a small tube of expensive hand cream. For your poor fingers, she said, pressing it into my palm. And Margaret? Thank you. Really. The cream smelled like orange blossoms. I used it for months. That was the trouble with Vanessa. Just when I thought I understood the shape of her coldness, she handed me something warm. Daniel came by Sunday with Paul's cufflinks in a plastic sandwich bag. Vanessa wants me to wear these, he said. One clasp had bent. The silver was dull, nearly gray. I laid them on my palm. Your father wore these at our wedding. I know. No, you don't. You were not there. He smiled. You told me. I rubbed my thumb over Paul's initials. I can have them cleaned and get the clasp repaired. You sure? Yes. Daniel looked relieved, then glanced toward the hallway where Paul's old flannel shirt still hung behind the closet door because I had never found a reason strong enough to move it. I want him there somehow, he said. I closed my fingers around the cufflinks. He will be. That night, I went into the spare room and opened the cedar chest at the foot of the bed. Inside were the fabrics I had been collecting since Daniel mentioned marriage. Deep green, cream, warm rust, all folded into precise squares. At the bottom lay one of Paul's clean blue work shirts. I spread it across my lap and rested my scissors over the pocket. For a long time, I couldn't make the first cut. The scissors made a small, awful sound when they closed. I stopped after the first inch. Paul had worn that shirt while painting our bedroom, repairing the back steps, and standing over the stove insisting chili required exactly one more shake of cumin. The left cuff had a pale burn mark from an argument with our old grill. The pocket sagged because he kept screws in it. Along with a carpenter's pencil, he was forever losing and finding behind his own ear. It was only a shirt. It had also outlived him. I put the scissors down and called Ruth. I cut Paul's shirt. Were you wearing it? No. Then I need more information before I decide how alarmed to be. I told her about the quilt. I had mentioned the idea once before, but not the part about using a square from Paul's work shirt. Where did you cut? She asked. Under the pocket. Good. That's sound fabric. I feel sick. That's because you think memories leak out through holes. I looked at the blue cloth spread across my lap. Don't they? No, Ruth said, but grief does weird things to laundry. She came over the next morning, and together we chose a section from the back where the blue had faded evenly. I cut a square just large enough for the center of the quilt. Ruth folded the remaining shirt and returned it to the chest. There, she said. You didn't destroy anything. It looks smaller. It is smaller. You're very comforting. I brought muffins. The quilt grew slowly because wedding errands kept interrupting it. Vanessa wanted my opinion on table linens, but only after she had narrowed the choices to two nearly identical shades of cream. Daniel asked me to taste 3 sauces from the caterer because Vanessa said he was incapable of describing food beyond good and weird. Aunt Lydia called twice about the welcome supper centerpieces, even though Vanessa had supposedly put a professional in charge. The first time Lydia called, she said, Vanessa tells me you're handling the personal touches. I was pinning a green fabric square and had the phone trapped between my shoulder and ear. I'm making cornbread. Exactly. Personal touches. I don't think cornbread wants to be a centerpiece. She did not laugh. By February, the welcome supper had acquired candles, printed menus, assigned seats, and a signature drink involving bourbon and rosemary. I had lost track of what was welcoming about it. I still planned to make the cornbread. Daniel came over one evening to try on his wedding suit, carrying it in a black garment bag and wearing the expression of a man transporting evidence. Why here? I asked. If Vanessa sees it before the wedding, something bad happens. That's the bride. Is it only the bride? I thought it applied to everybody. If your tailor sees how you're carrying that suit, something bad may happen. He hung it from the curtain rod in my bedroom because the hook on the door was too low. While he changed, I sat on the edge of the bed and pretended not to notice the collection of socks he had kicked into a corner. When he came out, the pants were too long and the jacket pulled across his shoulders. You ordered this online, didn't you? He looked offended. It's custom. Custom for whom? He turned toward the mirror. Vanessa said it looked good. Vanessa loves you. That sounds ominous. It means she may be looking at your face. I knelt to pin the hem. My knees cracked loudly. Daniel looked down. Was that you or the floor? The floor. I'm 27. Do you need help getting up? Not if you'd like to leave here alive. He laughed, and for a while we were ourselves. I marked the sleeves, adjusted the jacket, and made him stand straight while I checked the trouser break. He complained that Paul had never needed this much fuss for a suit. Your father's body was shaped like a filing cabinet. Everything hung straight. Daniel looked at himself from the side. Did he like weddings? He liked free cake. I mean ours. I sat back on my heels. He would have loved seeing you get married, even all this, especially all this. He would have complained the entire time and then told everybody it was perfect. Daniel's expression softened. I miss him. So do I. The room held still around us. These moments had become rare, not because we never mentioned Paul, but because Daniel usually made a joke before the sadness could settle. This time he let it. I reached into my dresser and brought out the repaired cufflinks. They shone now. The tiny engraved PH was visible on each face, the grooves dark against the polished silver. Daniel picked one up carefully. They look new. They aren't. No. He closed his hand around it. They're better. I wanted to ask if I could be the one to fasten them on his wedding day. The request seemed so natural that I almost said it. Then he said, Vanessa's dad is going to help me get ready. Oh. Her photographer wants some father of the bride and groom pictures. That'll be nice. He's excited. Apparently, he always wanted a son. The words were innocent. Daniel didn't hear the door close inside them. I put the cufflinks into their little velvet box. Should I give these to you now? He hesitated. Maybe keep them safe until the rehearsal. I'm afraid I'll lose them. You probably will. See? You're still needed. He meant it as affection. I smiled as though it felt like affection. In March, Vanessa asked what I planned to wear. We were at a Sunday brunch in a restaurant where every table had a tiny plant that looked plastic but wasn't. Daniel had gone to the restroom. Vanessa stirred hot sauce into her eggs and said, Do you have your dress yet? I have 2 possibilities. What colors? One is navy. Her fork stopped. What? Nothing. Navy is classic. That sounded like a diagnosis. She took a sip of coffee. The mothers will be in the photos together. My mom chose champagne. I'm not planning to dress as a matching salt shaker. Vanessa laughed, though not immediately. Navy could photograph dark. It is dark. We're trying for a light, airy palette. Then I'll stay near an open window. She put her hand over mine. Margaret, you can wear whatever makes you happy. It was the exact sentence people used when they wanted you to make a different choice without accepting responsibility for asking. What color would make you happy? Her face changed. That's not fair. No, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to think about the overall look. I'm part of the overall look. Yes, exactly. Daniel returned before I could ask what that meant. Vanessa immediately changed the subject to honeymoon flights, and he never knew we had come within half an inch of an argument. The next morning, she sent me links to 6 dresses. 4 were beige, 1 was pale gray. The last was labeled mushroom, which I consider an insult when applied to clothing. I sent them to Ruth. She called within 30 seconds. If you wear mushroom, I will object during the ceremony. I think objections are only for the marriage. This is more serious. We went shopping the following Saturday. I tried on champagne, silver, pale blue, and something the saleswoman called dusty sage that made me look recently exhumed. Ruth sat outside the dressing room with her arms folded. Vanessa doesn't get to choose your skin tone, she called through the curtain. Lower your voice. I am not the one who put you in a shroud. The saleswoman pretended to straighten a rack. In the end, I bought the navy dress. It had a soft draped neckline, sleeves to my elbows, and a skirt that moved when I walked. I looked like myself in it. An improved version, perhaps, but recognizably me. I sent Vanessa a picture. 3 dots appeared, vanished, and appeared again. Elegant. she finally replied. Nothing else. I placed the dress in my closet and tried not to feel as though I had won something. 2 weeks later, Elaine Bell called me. We had spoken at family dinners, but never on the phone. Vanessa said, "You found your dress," she began. I did. Navy. There was a pause that invited conspiracy. Yes. Good for you. I laughed. Am I joining a resistance movement? You may not realize it, but you are. Elaine's voice was low and warm, with a slight rasp that made everything sound confidential. She told me Vanessa had tried to persuade her to exchange the champagne dress for one in blush because the flowers had changed. I told her at 64, I'm done wearing colors named after embarrassment. I liked your champagne dress. So did I. That's why it's still in my closet. For 10 minutes, we were simply two women standing at the edge of the same wedding, comparing notes. Elaine knew her daughter's habits better than anyone and had the scars to prove it, though she covered them with humor. She means well, Elaine said. She just believes that if every detail is right, no one can ruin the day. Who does she think might ruin it? Life, mostly. There was something underneath that answer, but I didn't push. Before we hung up, Elaine said, I'm glad Daniel has you. Vanessa loves him, but she can pull people into her weather. Daniel has always been calm. Calm people get wet too. I wrote that sentence on a grocery receipt after the call. In April, my dining room became a sewing room. Green and cream pieces covered the table. Rust-colored strips hung from chair backs. I worked late, after wedding phone calls ended, and my house became mine again. One Sunday, Daniel arrived while the quilt top was spread across the floor. He stopped in the doorway. What's that? I moved too quickly, stepping in front of the blue center square. Something I'm working on. For the wedding? Maybe. He smiled. Vanessa said we're not supposed to peek at gifts. Then stop peeking. He lifted both hands and backed toward the kitchen. Can I get coffee, or is that also wrapped? While he searched for a mug, I folded the quilt and carried it into the spare room. He had not recognized his father's shirt. I was relieved, then strangely disappointed. He called from the kitchen. Did you get an email from Vanessa? About what? The wedding weekend schedule. I haven't checked. She wants everybody to know where they're supposed to be. I opened the message after he left. The schedule ran 6 pages. It listed arrivals, photographs, meals, transportation, hair appointments, speeches, and private family moments. Vanessa's mother and sisters were named 19 times. Her father was named 7. I found my name once. Margaret Hale, ceremony seating 3:15 p.m. Below it, in smaller type, was a note. Please arrive dressed and photo ready. Ushers will assist. I read the line twice, then a third time, waiting for another instruction to appear. It did not. I forwarded the schedule to Daniel with one sentence. Is this the complete version? He called 4 minutes later. You found your name, right? Yes. An usher is going to assist me into a chair. That's not all. I searched twice. I heard typing, then a chair scrape. Okay, that's weird. What were you expecting? There's supposed to be a mother-son photo, family shots, the rehearsal, the welcome dinner. I assumed you wanted me at the dinner I'm baking for. Of course we do. That wasn't a joke. He exhaled. Mom. What? Nothing. I'm looking. I carried the phone to the kitchen and wiped a perfectly clean spot on the counter. Daniel stayed quiet long enough that I could picture him scrolling through Vanessa's 6 pages, finally seeing what I had seen. She probably sent you the guest schedule by mistake, he said. Do guests have their names printed beside the time they're supposed to be seated? I don't know how she organized it. That makes 2 of us. I'll talk to her. Thank you. Another pause. You're not upset, are you? I looked through the doorway at the quilt folded over my dining room chair. Should I be? No. I mean, there's no reason to be. It's obviously an oversight. An oversight is such a useful thing. It has no hands, no voice, and no one who can be held responsible for it. I'll wait for the corrected schedule, I said. Vanessa called that evening. I am mortified, she began. That was promising. I sent you the wrong attachment. There are separate versions for the wedding party: vendors, immediate family, and general guests. Which version did I get? The family guest schedule. I leaned against my kitchen counter. What is a family guest? It's just a category. Am I immediate family? Margaret, I'm asking because you have a category called immediate family, and apparently I'm in a different one. She was quiet. When she spoke again, the polish had slipped out of her voice. I am trying to manage 200 people and 4 days of events. I cannot have every label treated as an emotional statement. I didn't create the labels. No, but you are choosing how to read them. There it was, the clean turn she could make in a conversation, so smooth I would find myself facing the wrong direction before I realized we had moved. I said, "Where am I supposed to be before the ceremony? Hair and makeup is full, but I assumed you'd rather use your own stylist anyway. No one asked me. I sent a recommendation. You sent me a link because I was trying to help." Her voice cracked on the last word, not dramatically, just enough to remind me that she was exhausted too. I pictured her at her dining table under bright light, surrounded by charts and receipts, trying to create a day no one could criticize. I softened. "I don't need hair and makeup," I said. "I need to know when I'm taking pictures with my son. You'll have photographs. I would never leave you out of those." "Good." Daniel made it sound as if you thought this was intentional. I asked him if the schedule was complete. He thinks you're hurt. Is that more serious than me actually being hurt? Silence. Then, more quietly, she said, "I'm sorry. You should have been on the immediate family version." The revised schedule arrived 20 minutes later. My name appeared 4 times. Welcome supper, ceremony seating, family photographs, mother-son portrait. The portrait was assigned 3 minutes. I did not mention that to Daniel. In May, the hotel informed Vanessa that homemade food could be served only if it arrived through the catering entrance in covered food-safe containers, with an ingredient list attached. This news reached me in an email marked "Urgent Cornbread Logistics." I called her. "Are we moving military equipment? I know it sounds ridiculous. You included a map. The loading area is confusing. I'm bringing cornbread, not invading Normandy." She laughed, which helped. The count had risen to 124. I would need 12 large pans, plus 2 gluten-free trays Vanessa added after a guest updated a response card. She had priced ordering the cornbread through the hotel and decided mine would be more meaningful and cheaper, though she didn't say it. I borrowed pans from Ruth and Elaine. Elaine brought hers over in the trunk of her car, each wrapped in an old towel. "Vanessa made me label these," she said, holding up a strip of masking tape that read, "Elaine Bell Property." How many Elaine Bells does she think are baking? She believes in systems. So does the prison service. Elaine laughed hard enough to snort, then made me swear I would never tell her daughter. We drank iced tea at my kitchen table while I cut parchment paper. She noticed the rust and green threads clinging to the rug. "What are you making?" "A quilt for them." She put down her glass. "You're making a quilt and 124 servings of cornbread?" "I'm not making the cornbread until Thursday." That wasn't the part I found unreasonable. I showed her the quilt top. The blue square from Paul's shirt sat in the center, bordered by cream, then green and rust in a pattern of widening steps. Elaine touched one corner with the back of her fingers. "My grandmother quilted," she said. "She'd slap us if we put a drink anywhere near one. I already like her." "This is beautiful, Margaret. Thank you. Does Daniel know?" "He saw it, but I don't think he recognized the shirt. He will." "I hope so." The hope embarrassed me a little. Gifts were not supposed to be tests, but some part of me had stitched a question into that quilt. "Do you remember where you came from?" Elaine studied the center square. "Vanessa will appreciate the work." The way she said it made me look at her. "Will she like it?" "She'll appreciate the work. That's not the same thing." "No." Elaine picked up her tea. "It isn't. She did not elaborate. I finished the quilt on the first Sunday in June. Ruth sat beside me while I stitched the binding closed by hand. "You're pulling too tight," she said. "I am not. The corner's puckering. The corner has character. That's what Daniel said about your cabinet." I loosened the thread. Along the bottom edge, I embroidered the wedding date in small cream numbers. I considered adding their names but decided against it. A date could belong to both of them without putting one name before the other and starting a debate no sane person needed. Ruth ran her hand over the finished surface. "What do you want to happen when you give it to them? What do you mean? I mean, in the little movie playing in your head." "There is no movie." "Margaret." I folded the quilt over my lap. I wanted Daniel to see Paul's shirt. I wanted his face to change. I wanted Vanessa to understand that the thing I was giving them could not be scanned from a registry or exchanged for a different color. I wanted them to spread it over their bed and feel held by someone who was no longer there. "I want them to use it," I said. Ruth looked at me, knowing I had answered a smaller question. "You can't make something that big and pretend you don't care how they receive it. It's a gift. Once I give it, it belongs to them." Objects do. What we tuck inside them tends to follow us home. I wrapped the quilt in tissue paper, placed it in a sturdy white box, and carried it to a stationery store to have it professionally wrapped. I chose deep green paper and cream ribbon. The clerk tied a wide bow and asked whether I wanted the card tucked under it or taped securely to the top. "Taped," I said. "I don't want it getting lost." I wrote the card at home. "Daniel and Vanessa, may your home always be a place where both of you are known, welcomed, and loved as you are." The blue square in the center came from one of your father's work shirts, Daniel. He wore it in the home where you grew up. Now a piece of that home can live in yours. With all my love, Mom. I read it twice before sealing the envelope. 2 days before the wedding, my kitchen smelled like browned butter and cornmeal. Every flat surface held a pan. I had calculated baking times on a yellow pad and taped ingredient lists to 12 plastic lids. At 11 that morning, Vanessa texted that the gluten-free cornbread needed separate serving utensils. At 11:15, Aunt Lydia called to ask whether I had garnish. For cornbread? Something green would be pretty. If it's green, don't eat it. At noon, Daniel came by in a rush to pick up the cufflinks. He looked tired. There was a nick under his chin and a coffee stain near the hem of his shirt. "You shaved at midday?" Vanessa scheduled a grooming appointment. It appears they missed a piece. I wet my thumb and reached toward his chin. He ducked away. "I'm 39. Then you've had plenty of time to learn." He took the velvet cufflink box and slid it into his pocket without opening it. "Do you have everything?" he asked. 12 pans, 2 special trays, ingredient labels, serving instructions. Possibly garnish if your aunt breaks in here with parsley. I mean for the hotel. My dress, shoes, toiletries, the wedding gift. Don't forget the gift. Vanessa's worried people will leave things in their cars. I'm bringing it. And you have the schedule? Both versions. He winced. That wasn't funny. It was a little funny. He glanced at his watch. I have to go, of course. At the door, I straightened his collar. Are you happy? He stopped moving. The question seemed to surprise him, which surprised me. In all the talk about timing, seating, clothes, flowers, and food, perhaps no one had asked. Yes, he said. Then he smiled, and for once there was no apology in it. I really am. I kissed his cheek. Then go get married. The welcome supper took place the next evening in the hotel's smaller ballroom. My cornbread arrived through the catering entrance, passed inspection, and was arranged in silver baskets under sprigs of rosemary that Aunt Lydia must have smuggled in. People praised it all night. Vanessa thanked the hotel chef during her welcome remarks. I was standing close enough to see Daniel realize it. His eyes found mine across the room. He mouthed, "Sorry." I smiled and lifted my glass. The next afternoon, dressed in navy and carrying the green box against my hip, I took the elevator to the hospitality suite because Daniel had texted that gifts should go upstairs before the ceremony. The hallway smelled of hairspray and lilies. I could hear women laughing before I reached the door. I adjusted the cream ribbon, checked that my card was still taped securely beneath it, and knocked. Tessa opened it with a strip of dress tape stuck to one wrist. "Oh, good," she said, stepping aside. "We thought you were the steamer." Less than 2 minutes later, I was back in the elevator with the box still in my arms. The desk accepts deliveries. Vanessa's sentence followed me down 5 floors. So did Daniel's smile. That little tightening at the corners of his mouth had apologized before he even spoke, as if he knew he was about to fail me and hoped acknowledging it silently would count as resistance. The elevator doors opened on the lobby. I carried the box to the front desk and waited behind a man arguing about a minibar charge. By the time it was my turn, my forearms were trembling. The clerk smiled. "Checking in?" "No." "I need to leave this for the Bell Hale wedding." "Of course." "Are you with the florist or one of the delivery services?" "No." She pulled a luggage tag from beneath the counter. "Which company?" "I'm not with a company. I'm the groom's mother." Her eyes rose to mine. The professional smile slipped, then returned in a gentler form. "I'm sorry." I thought, "I know what you thought." I regretted the sharpness immediately. She had not sent me downstairs. "My daughter-in-law asked me to leave it here," I added. "Absolutely. We'll make sure it gets to the wedding gift room." She wrote Bell Hale in thick black marker and looped the tag around the cream ribbon. The card was still taped under the bow, my handwriting facing up. "Do you want a receipt?" The question nearly made me laugh. "No." A bellman came from behind a door, lifted the box onto a brass cart, and wheeled it away between 2 suitcases. I stood there after it disappeared. For almost a year, I had imagined Daniel opening that box. I had pictured his hands finding the blue square, his face changing when he recognized the fabric. I had imagined being in the room when he understood. Now the quilt was rolling toward a storage room with somebody's luggage. Margaret? Elaine crossed the lobby in a champagne dress and low gold shoes, carrying a small evening bag. Her hair was swept up, and she looked lovely enough that I momentarily forgot to hide my face. What happened? Nothing. She looked at the empty place beside me, then toward the cart disappearing down the service corridor. "Was that your gift?" "They're collecting them downstairs." "Since when?" "I don't know. Wedding efficiency." Elaine studied me. "There are people who accept the first answer because they want to be polite, and people who wait quietly until you grow tired of lying. Elaine was the second kind." I adjusted the cuff of my navy dress. I took it upstairs. "Vanessa was busy. She sent you back down?" "She said the desk accepts deliveries." Elaine's mouth opened. "Don't," I said. "I wasn't going to." "Yes, you were. Whatever you were going to say, please don't. If I hear it out loud, I'll have to decide what it means." The lobby moved around us. Guests in bright dresses crossed toward the ballroom. A man carrying a camera hurried past with 2 assistants. Somewhere nearby, silverware spilled with a crash, followed by applause from people who had no idea what had happened. Elaine reached for my hand. "You look beautiful. So do you. And Navy photographs just fine." I laughed, though it came out unevenly. She tucked my hand through her arm. "Come on. We're due for immediate family pictures." The photographer had set up near tall windows at the end of the ballroom corridor. Vanessa's family was already arranged in shifting combinations. Elaine and her former ex-husband, current husband, Martin, stood with Vanessa. Then Tessa and Camille joined. Then Aunt Lydia. Then Daniel was pulled into the center while someone called for the full Bell side. I stood near a potted palm with my evening bag clasped in both hands. An assistant wearing a headset checked her clipboard. "Are you at the wedding party? I'm Daniel's mother." She ran a finger down the page. "Margaret?" "Yes. You're at 3:42. I checked the clock on the wall. 3:28. The schedule said 3:30. We're running behind. Should I stay here, if you don't mind?" I did not mind. I had become excellent at not minding. Daniel saw me between photographs and smiled. "Mom." "Wow." He broke from the group and came toward me. His suit fit properly now. The sleeves ended exactly where they should, showing the repaired cufflinks at his wrists. "You're wearing them," I said. "Of course I am." He hugged me, careful of my hair. "You look beautiful, so I've been told." He leaned back. "Are you okay?" There it was again. A question large enough to invite honesty, asked at a time when honesty would cause trouble. "You're getting married in half an hour," I said. "How are you?" His grin arrived slowly, almost shyly, terrified. "That's healthy." "Is it?" "No, but it's too late to run." He laughed. The photographer called his name. Before he went back, he touched my elbow. "I'll see you in a few minutes." My 3-minute portrait happened at 3:47. Daniel and I stood in front of the window while the photographer adjusted us with quick little gestures. "Mother, turn your shoulders." Groom, hand on her back, closer. Beautiful. I could feel the velvet cufflink box missing from where it had lived in my dresser for months. Now the silver touched Daniel's wrists. Paul was there, as much as Paul could be. "Look at each other," the photographer said. Daniel turned toward me. For 1 second, the noise in the corridor fell away. His face was open and nervous, the face of a man about to step into a life he had chosen. I wanted to say something useful, something a mother was supposed to say. Instead, I reached up and straightened his tie. The camera clicked. "That's the one," the photographer said. Then Vanessa was called in for a picture with Daniel and both mothers. I stepped into place on Daniel's right while Elaine stood beside Vanessa. Vanessa glanced at me. "Oh, you wore the navy." "I did. It looks elegant." The photographer lifted his camera. "Mothers closer to the couple, please." I moved half a step. "Closer," he said. Vanessa reached for Elaine's waist. Daniel's hand settled lightly at my back. We smiled. After 2 shots, Tessa called from behind the photographer. "We need the original Bell family before Martin starts crying." Everyone laughed. Vanessa turned away, the group opened, and I found myself outside it again. The assistant touched my arm. "We're all done with you." All done with you. It was not her fault either. An usher seated me at 3:58, nearly 20 minutes before the ceremony. My place was in the first row on Daniel's side at the aisle with an empty chair beside me where Paul would have sat. No one had placed anything on it. I was glad. A framed photograph or memorial flower would have undone me. Uncle Ray lowered himself into the row behind mine and whispered, "They frisk you for snacks? Only if they know you. I brought almonds. You always were a criminal." He slipped the little bag into my hand. The room filled. Music rose from the string quartet. Guests turned and smiled as people were escorted down the aisle. Martin entered with Vanessa, so Elaine was escorted to her seat just before the processional began. She passed me with her hand resting on Tessa's arm. The photographer walked backward in front of them, capturing each step. I had been seated by an usher before most of the guests arrived. I looked at Daniel. He stood beneath an arch of white flowers, rubbing one thumb across his father's cufflink. When he saw me, he smiled, not apologetically this time. He looked grateful and proud and young. That saved the ceremony for me. Vanessa came down the aisle with her chin trembling. All the control left her face when she saw Daniel. She laughed once through her tears, and Daniel's mouth crumpled. Their love was real. That was part of what made everything else so difficult. Vanessa was not pretending to love my son. Daniel was not weak in every room of his life. They were 2 complicated people standing in front of everyone they knew, promising to make a home together. I cried when they exchanged vows. At the reception, my assigned table included Uncle Ray, Paul's cousin Denise, 2 of Martin's former business partners, and a couple from Oregon who thought I was Daniel's aunt. "We're not great at guessing ages," the wife explained. "I'm choosing to take that kindly." The husband leaned over. "So how are you related? I gave birth to the groom." His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Denise laughed so loudly she startled the waiter. The dinner was good. The wine was better. Tessa gave a 14-minute speech that included slides. Camille sang part of a song no one had known she planned to sing. Martin spoke about gaining a son. Elaine told a story about Vanessa organizing her own birthday dinner when she was 12, then caught herself and changed the age to when she was younger, as if correcting a dangerous mistake. I folded and unfolded the small card containing my own toast beneath the table. I had written about Daniel learning to ride a bicycle and refusing to let Paul release the back of the seat. Paul ran half a block bent over, pretending he was still holding on after he had let go. Daniel rode by himself because he believed someone he trusted was behind him. Before dessert, the wedding coordinator crouched beside my chair. "We're running long," she whispered. "Vanessa asked us to cut the remaining remarks." "Remaining? Yours and Aunt Lydia's." Across the room, Aunt Lydia was already standing near the band with a microphone in her hand. I looked toward Daniel. He was speaking to a waiter. Vanessa sat beside him, laughing at something Tessa had said. "Of course," I answered. I returned the card to my evening bag. Later, Daniel found me near the coffee station. "I'm sorry about the toast, I know. We lost almost 40 minutes, I noticed. Tessa's slides were supposed to be 5. There were transitions." He laughed, then saw that I didn't. "Mom, I really am sorry. You keep saying that." His expression changed. Before either of us could continue, Vanessa appeared and took his hand. "They need us for the cake." She leaned over and kissed my cheek. She smelled like roses and champagne. "Everything is perfect," she said. "I'm so glad you're here." Then she pulled Daniel toward the ballroom. He looked back at me over his shoulder and mouthed it one more time. "Sorry." I stood beside the coffee urn with my unwritten ending folded inside my purse and finally understood that his apologies were not evidence that he saw me. They were how he gave himself permission not to act. I stayed until the band began its final set. Uncle Ray offered to walk me to the elevator, but I told him to remain where the bourbon was free. He saluted with his glass and said Paul would have respected that decision. In my hotel room, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed in my navy dress. Music traveled faintly through the floor. I could feel the bass more than hear it. The toast card was still inside my evening bag. I unfolded it and read the last lines. "A good marriage isn't trusting that someone will always hold on. It's knowing love remains behind you even when you have to balance on your own." It seemed sentimental now. Worse, it seemed dishonest. Paul and I had not always remained behind each other. Sometimes one of us had walked 10 feet ahead in anger and left the other carrying groceries. Once, after an argument about his brother Ray, Paul slept on the couch for 3 nights and claimed it was because his back needed a firmer surface. Marriage was less like learning to ride a bicycle and more like 2 people moving a sofa through a narrow hallway while giving opposite instructions. I tore the card in half, then immediately regretted it. Not because I planned to give the toast later, I just dislike waste. I put the pieces in the wastebasket, changed into my nightgown, and took 32 hairpins out of my head. I counted because the stylist had said she used 32, and I wanted proof that no piece of metal remained lodged near my brain. At 11:48, Daniel texted, "Where'd you go?" I typed, "Back to my room. Wonderful wedding. Love you." He answered with a red heart and a photograph of himself and Vanessa cutting the cake. His smile was wide. Vanessa had frosting on the tip of her nose. I saved the picture. The farewell brunch began at 10 the next morning. I arrived at 10:15, which qualified as rebellion for me. The ballroom had been transformed overnight. The candles were gone. Sunlight exposed coffee stains on the carpet and 3 abandoned place cards beneath a chair. Guests wore soft clothes and tired faces. Vanessa sat at the center of a long table in white pants, dark glasses, and the serene expression of someone whose enormous machinery had finally stopped moving. When she saw me, she stood. There she is. She came around the table and hugged me. "Thank you for everything," she said. The cornbread was a huge hit. I heard the chef did an excellent job. She pulled back. "Oh no, don't worry. I'm not challenging him to a bake-off. I thanked him because I thought he made the whole menu. I should have said something about you. It's over now." She removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were tired and pink at the edges. "Did you have a good time?" There were at least 6 possible answers. I chose the one that required no work. "You were a beautiful bride." Her face softened. "I'm glad you wore the navy." That surprised a real laugh out of me. "Are you? Honestly?" "Yes. You looked like yourself." She glanced toward the table, where Tessa was waving a coffee cup for attention. I wasn't very good at letting people look like themselves this year. It was the closest she had come to naming what the wedding had been like for everyone around her. I waited, thinking something more might follow. Instead, she said, "We have to leave for the airport in an hour. Daniel's panicking because he can't find his passport. Inside pocket of his gray backpack." She stared. "He always puts important things in an unusual place so he'll remember them," I explained. "Then he remembers only that the place was unusual." Vanessa kissed my cheek. I knew there was a reason I married into this family. I found Daniel crouched beside a pile of luggage in the lobby. The gray backpack was open on the floor. "Inside pocket," I said. I checked. "Move the travel pillow." He moved it. The passport appeared. He looked up at me. "I love you. You love me because I understand your disorder. I don't have a disorder. You packed one shoe in your carry-on and one in your suitcase. That was strategic." He stood and hugged me. I felt the hard edge of the passport between us. "Last night was perfect," he said. "I'm glad." "Was Vanessa okay with you?" She was kind of in a zone before the ceremony. She was busy. She didn't mean anything by the gift thing. I went still. So he had thought about it. He had decided what it meant. He had simply done so without speaking to either of us. I didn't say she did. That's why I'm saying it. I know how it looked. How did it look? He glanced toward the ballroom doors. "Mom." "No, tell me." She was stressed. There were packages everywhere, and the room had to be cleared before the ceremony. The crystal bowl could stay. He frowned, trying to remember. Her aunt's gift. Oh, right. His face tightened. That had already been opened, and mine hadn't. We agreed not to open wedding gifts before the trip, except the bowl. He shifted his weight. The lobby was not a place where Daniel wanted a conversation with edges. I just don't want this to become a thing. I haven't made it one. I know. That's what I'm saying. It was astonishing how often he thanked me for a silence he had requested. Vanessa called his name from across the lobby. Daniel kissed my temple and grabbed the backpack. "We'll call from Italy. Find your other shoe first." He laughed as he walked away. I watched them leave through the revolving door, still beautiful, still happy, still completely unaware that their wedding gift sat somewhere in the hotel without them. I assumed the staff would place it with the others. 3 days later, the Ashford Hotel called while I was watering the herbs on my kitchen windowsill. "May I speak with Margaret Hale?" This is she. The woman identified herself as the events manager and asked whether I had left a large green package for the Bell Hale wedding. Yes. "We found your phone number through the reservation records. The package was not collected with the wedding items. I set the watering can down." "What do you mean, not collected?" "It appears it was placed with incoming deliveries rather than in the ballroom gift room. The couple's representative signed for the ballroom items Sunday morning, but this remained in our holding area. The couple's representative. Probably Tessa, maybe Camille, someone with a clipboard and one of those paper crowns folded inside her suitcase." "Can you contact Daniel Hale?" I asked. "We have attempted the number on the event account, but the voicemail is full. Since your name was attached to the package, we wanted to notify you." "My name?" There was a card, though it appears to have become detached. My fingers tightened around the phone. "Is the card there?" "One moment." I listened to soft instrumental hold music and stared at the rosemary plant dripping into its saucer. The woman returned. "I'm sorry. We have the envelope, but it's torn along the back. There is no card inside." I closed my eyes. We can hold the package for 14 days or arrange shipping at the owner's expense. I'll come get it." The drive took 2 hours each way. I told myself I was protecting the quilt, which was true. I also told myself I did not mind, which was not. The hotel looked smaller without flowers and formally dressed people filling the lobby. At the desk, I gave my name. A young man disappeared through the service door and returned carrying the green box. One corner was dented. The cream bow had flattened, and the tape where my card had been was covered with torn white paper. "Would you like help to your car?" he asked. "No, thank you." The box felt exactly as heavy as it had on the wedding day. I placed it in the trunk, then stood with my hand on the lid. Daniel and Vanessa would not return for another 6 days. I had a key to their house. I could drive there, leave the box on their dining table, and never tell them what happened. When they came home, the gift would be waiting. The story would become charming. A hotel mistake, a rescued quilt, one more thing Mom had handled. I could already hear Daniel, "You're the best." I closed the trunk and drove home. The wrapping paper tore easily along the damaged corner. I removed the ribbon, opened the box, and lifted the tissue. The quilt lay exactly as I had folded it. The rust border was smooth. The cream embroidery was intact. Paul's blue square remained hidden in the center fold, still waiting to be recognized. I pressed my palm over it. "What did you expect?" I asked myself aloud. The house did not answer. I refolded the quilt and placed it in the linen closet between extra pillows and the winter blankets. The empty green box went into the recycling bin. I kept the cream ribbon, though I could not have explained why. Daniel called from Florence the next afternoon. He described a restaurant where Vanessa had ordered something she thought was chicken and received rabbit. "She cried," he said. "I did not cry," Vanessa called in the background. I objected emotionally. "She made me switch plates." "That's marriage," I told him. "Sometimes you eat the rabbit." They sounded happy. I did not mention the hotel. When they returned, Vanessa brought me a small bottle of lemon-scented olive oil and a framed copy of the photograph where Daniel and I had looked at each other while I straightened his tie. "I love this one," she said. "You both forgot the camera was there." The gesture confused me more than cruelty would have. I hugged her and put the photograph on the mantel. Neither of them asked about my wedding gift. I waited a week, then 2. On the 3rd Sunday, Daniel called at 7:30 in the morning. "I need a favor." I was still in bed. "Is the house on fire?" "No, but the new dining table is coming today." "On a Sunday?" "They gave us a delivery window from 8 to 4. That is not a window. That is a hostage situation. We promised to meet Vanessa's parents for brunch, and we already canceled twice. Could you wait at our place?" I looked toward my bedroom door. Beyond it, down the hall, the quilt rested inside the linen closet. "Daniel, I know it's last minute. We wouldn't ask if we had another option. There were always other options. I just happened to be the one that complained least. I nearly said no. Then I heard Paul's voice in my own head telling me not to make every little thing into a battle. He had said that often during our marriage, usually when he wanted me to surrender without calling it surrender. "What time will you be back?" "By 1. 2 at the latest." At 4:30, I was still sitting in Daniel and Vanessa's living room with the delivery men nowhere in sight. Vanessa texted to say brunch had turned into drinks. "You're a lifesaver," she wrote. At 5:12, the table arrived. At 5:40, after the men had gone, I stood alone in their dining room among cardboard, packing foam, and unopened wedding presents stacked along the wall. Every gift had a colored sticker identifying who had given it. There was no green box, no quilt, no empty space where either should have been. My phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. "Mom," he said when I answered, cheerful and relieved. "You're the best." I looked at the long, new table they had chosen for the home where they planned to welcome people. "No," I said quietly. "I'm convenient." "What?" "You heard me." There was a burst of laughter behind him. Glasses clinked. Vanessa said something I couldn't make out. "Mom, are you mad the delivery took so long?" "I'm tired. I told you we'd be back by 2. It's almost 6. I know. Brunch got away from us. Brunch didn't take your phone. I texted. Vanessa texted. Another pause. He lowered his voice. Okay, we're leaving now. I looked around the dining room. The new table stood slightly crooked beneath the chandelier. Packing foam covered the floor. One chair had a thin scratch along the back, and I knew that if I mentioned it, I would become responsible for arranging the replacement. You'll need to check the chairs, I said. There are 2 extra bolts on the floor, and one of the leaves is still in the box. Can you put the bolt somewhere safe? No. It was a tiny word. It gave me the same startled feeling as hearing a glass break in another room. Daniel did not answer immediately. Just leave them on the table. That's what I'm doing. I set the bolts in the center of the polished wood, picked up my purse, and left the packing materials where they were. On the drive home, I alternated between feeling righteous and ridiculous. A 67-year-old woman should have been able to leave 2 bolts on a table without treating it like the Boston Tea Party. Ruth was sitting on my front steps when I pulled into the driveway. She stood and brushed the back of her pants. Where have you been? Held hostage by furniture. You missed supper. I had forgotten we were supposed to eat at the little Italian restaurant near her house. My phone showed 2 missed calls from her, both silenced while I waited for the delivery. Oh, Ruth, I called twice. I'm sorry. She studied my face. You don't look sorry. You look homicidal. I can be both. We went inside. I made scrambled eggs because neither of us had eaten, and Ruth opened a bottle of white wine I had been saving for no particular occasion. As soon as we sat down, she asked what happened. I told her about the 8-hour delivery window, the extended brunch, and the 2 bolts I had bravely abandoned. You left the packaging? She asked. All of it. Good. I may have left a banana peel in the trash. Now you're just being reckless. I laughed, but it didn't last. Ruth noticed. What else? Nothing. She ate a bite of eggs and waited. I got up to refill my water even though my glass was full. When I returned, she was still looking at me. The hotel called, I said. What hotel? The Ashford. They found the quilt. Her fork lowered. Found it where? In their delivery holding area. Daniel and Vanessa left without it. Ruth stared at me. When was this? Over 2 weeks ago. You drove there. Yes, 4 hours, yes. And you didn't tell me? You would have done that with your face. What face? That one. She dropped her napkin onto the table. Where is the quilt? In the linen closet. Ruth stood. Sit down. I'm looking at it. It hasn't changed. I need to see this with my own eyes. She walked down the hallway before I could stop her. I followed and found her opening the closet door. The quilt was on the upper shelf, folded beneath a spare comforter. Ruth reached for it, then stopped. May I? It's not evidence. It feels like evidence. I pulled it down myself and carried it to the bedroom. We spread it across the bed. The blue square landed near the center, quiet and ordinary. Ruth touched it once. They still don't know? They never asked. Tell Daniel. He's home from his honeymoon. I'm sure he has other things on his mind. That excuse expired when he made you sit in his house for 8 hours. What am I supposed to say? Your gift was misdirected and you didn't notice? Yes. And then what? Then he knows. That doesn't make him care. Ruth's face softened, which was worse than her anger. Oh, Margaret. Don't. You're waiting to see how long it takes him to notice. I'm not waiting for anything. You put a piece of Paul in a box and your son left it at a hotel. He didn't know what was inside. That is not the comforting argument you think it is. I folded the bottom edge of the quilt toward the center. Once I tell him, he'll be sorry. He should be. He's always sorry. He says it. I forgive him, and nothing has to change. Ruth sat beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. The quilt lay across our knees. Finally, she said, Then don't tell him yet. I looked at her. I thought you wanted me to. I want you to stop doing things just because they make Daniel's life easier. Telling him tonight would make you feel exposed and give him a chance to apologize before he's had to notice anything. That sounds like a test. No. Tests are secret rules with punishments. This is you taking time to decide what you actually want. I don't know what I want. Good. That's more honest than what you usually say. She helped me fold the quilt and return it to the closet. This time, I placed it on top of the comforter instead of underneath. The following Sunday, Daniel arrived with pastries and a peace offering in the form of a new cabinet hinge. "I'm fixing that door," he announced. "It only took a year, 11 months. Your attention to detail is inspiring." He spent 40 minutes removing the old hinge, 20 minutes discovering the new one was the wrong size, and another 10 trying to force it anyway. From the kitchen table, I watched him mutter at the screws. "Did the table survive?" I asked. "Barely. We had to burn the house down. Shame." He looked over his shoulder. "You're still annoyed. I spent my entire Sunday waiting for your furniture. You've spent Sundays at our place before, not alone while you were drinking with people." He set the screwdriver down. "We apologized. No, you explained. I said I was sorry. And then you asked if I'd save the bolts." His mouth opened, then closed. The cabinet door hung between us at an angle. "I didn't realize you had plans," he said. "You didn't ask. You usually tell me. I usually rearrange them." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Is this about the wedding?" It was amazing how quickly everything became one unreasonable grievance if I allowed it to touch another. "It's about last Sunday, because if it's about what Vanessa said upstairs, I didn't bring that up. She thinks you're holding on to it. Why? She can tell." "Did she apologize?" Daniel looked toward the window. "She said she was stressed. That wasn't my question." He picked up the hinge and turned it in his fingers. "She feels terrible that it came out that way. It came out exactly the way she meant it at the time. You don't know that. I was standing there." He sighed. "I don't want to fight." "You never do." "That's a bad thing now?" "It depends on who has to swallow everything so you can avoid it." He stared at me with an expression I had rarely seen on his face. Not anger, hurt. Somehow I had wounded him by naming the shape of the arrangement he had enjoyed. "I came over to fix your cabinet," he said. "You came over with the wrong hinge." That made him laugh despite himself. The tension loosened. "I'll get the right one. I believe in you." He kissed my forehead before he left, and I almost told him about the quilt. Almost. The next request came from Vanessa. She called on a Tuesday evening and began by asking whether my basement was damp. "It depends," I said. "Are you planning to grow mushrooms? We have duplicates from the registry and nowhere to put them. 2 mixers, 3 sets of wine glasses, an extra vacuum. Return them." Some came without receipts. We thought we could store them at your place until we decide what to do. My basement already held boxes Daniel had left there after college, 2 lamps Vanessa decided did not suit their living room, and a set of patio cushions they borrowed each summer. "How long is until you decide?" "A few months." "No." The word came more easily this time. Vanessa was silent. "No, it isn't damp. No, you can't store the gifts here." "Oh." I braced myself for argument. Instead, she said, "Okay." I should have asked before Daniel loaded the car. I closed my eyes. "He already loaded them?" "He assumed you'd say yes. Of course he did. I'll tell him to unload." Her voice held no sarcasm. If anything, she sounded embarrassed. "Thank you," I said. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen waiting to feel cruel. What I felt was space. For the next few weeks, life settled into an uneasy pattern. Daniel still called on Sundays, but the conversations were shorter. Vanessa sent me wedding photographs and a thoughtful note thanking me again for the invitations. I sent them a card for their 1-month anniversary, but no gift. Then, in August, an email arrived with the subject line, "Family Welcome Dinner." Vanessa had created a guest list of 23 relatives who had missed the wedding or left before speaking properly with the couple. The attached menu included roast chicken, potatoes, 2 salads, and my peach cobbler. Halfway down the message, she wrote, "Since Margaret's house has the best flow for a relaxed family evening, we thought it would be perfect. No one had asked me. I called Daniel. He answered cheerfully. You saw the menu? I saw my house. Great, right? Vanessa was worried you felt left out of the wedding stuff, so we thought this could be your event. My event? You love hosting. I love being invited into decisions that involve my oven. He went quiet. Is the date bad? The date isn't the problem. We can change it. I'm not hosting the dinner. He gave a short laugh. What do you mean? I mean, you'll need another place. Mom, Vanessa already sent the invitation. She sent an invitation to my house without asking me. We thought you'd be happy. You thought I'd comply. His voice hardened. So this is punishment. For what? You know exactly what. She made one careless comment at the hotel, and you've been keeping score ever since. I looked down the hallway toward the linen closet. The comment hurt, I said. You standing there and allowing it hurt more. I was trying to prevent a scene. You prevented a scene for her by asking me to disappear. That's not fair. No, I said. It wasn't. For once, Daniel did not apologize. He said, fine. We'll make other arrangements. Then he hung up. The following Sunday, my phone did not ring. I carried my phone from room to room as though the signal might be stronger near the laundry. At 10, I made coffee. At 11, I wiped the kitchen counters. At noon, I opened the refrigerator and stared at the chicken I had bought because Daniel usually appeared hungry on Sundays, no matter what he claimed to have eaten before coming over. By 2, I was angry at him for not calling. By 3, I was angry at myself for caring. At 3:15, the phone rang. I answered too quickly. Hello? Were you expecting the president? Ruth asked. No. Daniel? No, you're lying. I was expecting the president. She came over with a deck of cards and beat me at gin rummy for 3 hours. I accused her of cheating twice. She admitted it once. Daniel did not call the next Sunday either. The dinner was moved to a private room at an Italian restaurant. I knew because Aunt Lydia called to ask whether I was still bringing peach cobbler. I'm not hosting, I said. I heard. I just thought the cobbler might be separate. From me? From the hosting. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Lydia, if Daniel and Vanessa want peach cobbler, I'll give them the recipe. Vanessa says yours never turns out the same when other people make it. That sounds like a challenge. It was a compliment. Then thank her for me. Lydia lowered her voice. People are saying this is about the wedding. People should find a hobby. You know how families are. I do. They call the woman who said no because the man who made plans in her house is too upset to call. That's not fair. Daniel is hurt. So am I. She went quiet. Lydia was not unkind. She simply believed discomfort was a loose thread older women were responsible for tucking away. You're his mother, she said at last, and he's my son. He only gets one mother. I only get one life. The words surprised both of us. Lydia said she hoped I would reconsider. I said I hoped the restaurant made excellent cobbler. The next morning, I received a text from Vanessa. Can we talk? I almost answered, we've never tried it, but I was not quite that brave. She called during lunch. I didn't know Daniel hadn't asked you, she said, before I could say hello. You sent the invitation. He told me you'd love the idea. So you believed him. You always host. That isn't the same as volunteering. No, it isn't. I waited. Vanessa's ability to admit a point often made me suspicious that she was clearing the table for a larger argument. I should have checked with you, she continued. I'm sorry, thank you. But I didn't mean to take over your house. You created a menu. You like menus. I like my menus. She released a breath that might have been a laugh. The reason I wanted it there was because you said you felt excluded. I said your husband asked me to disappear. That is not the same sentence. No, it isn't. She was quiet long enough that I heard the faint tapping of her fingernail against something hard. Daniel said you're still upset about the hotel suite. I'm upset about a pattern. What pattern? I looked toward the dining room, where I had addressed her invitations and repaired her husband's suit. You ask for my hands and leave the rest of me outside. Her tapping stopped. That's cruel. It wasn't meant to be. See, that's the thing, Margaret. You say things in that calm voice, and because you don't yell, everyone acts like you're being reasonable. What would make it reasonable? Maybe acknowledging that I have tried with you. I thought of the hand cream, the olive oil, the framed photograph on my mantel. You have, and you've tried with me. Yes. So why does it feel like every mistake I make becomes proof of who I am? The question did not belong only to Vanessa. I had asked versions of it during my marriage, usually when Paul brought up something I thought had been forgiven. Maybe because you defend the mistake before you repair it, I said. Her breath caught. And what would repair it? Seeing me differently. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She asked if I would attend the dinner at the restaurant. I told her I would think about it. I did think about it. I thought about walking into a room where everyone knew I had refused to host. I thought about Aunt Lydia asking for the cobbler. I thought about Daniel watching me, waiting to see whether my presence meant everything was over. Then I declined. The night of the dinner, I took the cream ribbon from the drawer where I had put it and nearly carried the quilt to Daniel's house. I stood in the hallway with it in my arms. I could leave it on the table. He would call. He would recognize the shirt, and the whole argument might collapse beneath the weight of his grief. That was what stopped me. Paul's memory deserved better than being used as a pry bar. I put the quilt back. Daniel called 5 days later, not on Sunday. Did you get Vanessa's apology? She called me. She feels awful. She also feels accused. Well, you accused her. I told her how I felt. By saying she only wants your hands? I closed my eyes. Of course she had repeated that line. Sharp words traveled faster than soft ones. I said you both ask for my help without treating me like I belong. That's not true. Then why did you leave me out of the wedding schedule? It was the wrong attachment. Why did the hotel call me about a gift you never noticed was missing? The words escaped before I could stop them. Daniel went silent. I gripped the phone. What gift? There was still time to lie. The wedding gift I brought upstairs. The box Vanessa told you to leave at the desk? Yes, we got all the gifts. No, you didn't. How do you know? Because the hotel called me 3 days later. His voice changed. What? They had placed it with Deliveries. No one collected it. Why didn't they call us? They tried. The event voicemail was full. Where is it now? With me. Another silence heavier than the first. What was it? I'm not discussing that on the phone. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you notice? That's not fair. We had dozens of gifts. We didn't have a list of what was coming. You had colored stickers identifying every person who gave you something. How do you know that? I spent 8 hours in your dining room. His breathing sharpened. So you've been waiting for this. You've been sitting there with the gift, seeing if I'd fail some test I didn't know I was taking. No, that's exactly what you did. I didn't tell you because I knew what would happen. What? You'd apologize. You'd feel terrible. I'd comfort you. Then you'd ask where you could pick it up. What do you want from me? I want you to stop treating my hurt like an inconvenience I created. I didn't know about the gift. You knew what happened upstairs. Oh, for God's sake. The phrase hit harder than anything Vanessa had said. Daniel immediately lowered his voice. I'm sorry. There it was. I laughed once, without humor. Mom, I have to go. Wait, what was in the box? Something I made for you. His voice softened. Can I come get it? No. I hung up. My hands shook afterward. I sat at the kitchen table until the room stopped feeling tilted. He called twice more that evening. I did not answer. Vanessa sent a message the next morning. I'm sorry about the gift. I genuinely thought the hotel staff would bring it up with the others. I should have looked at you when you came into the suite. I should not have spoken to you like that. I read it many times. It was the apology I had wanted. Direct, specific, without an explanation hiding inside it. I wrote back, thank you for saying that. Then she sent another message. Please don't punish Daniel for my mistake. He didn't know the gift was lost. The repair lasted less than a minute. I did not respond. The Sunday calls stopped entirely. September passed in a strange quiet. I stopped buying Daniel's watery coffee. The chicken in my freezer developed a coat of frost. Every Sunday afternoon, I found reasons not to look at the clock. Ruth began inviting me to a monthly supper with 3 women from her neighborhood. I declined twice before she appeared at my door and told me to put on shoes. I am wearing shoes. Those are slippers with ambition. The supper was loud, ordinary, and unexpectedly pleasant. Joyce, a retired respiratory therapist, told a story so long that the restaurant turned off half its lights before she reached the point. Maribel insisted we split dessert 4 ways, then ate half of it herself. No one asked about Daniel until I mentioned him. Afterward, Ruth showed me the textile workshop at the community center where she volunteered. People brought in torn blankets, work clothes, table linens, and curtains. Volunteers repaired what could be repaired and sorted the rest for reuse. "You're recruiting me," I said. "I'm exploiting your hands. At least you admit it." The coordinator, Gwen, asked if I could come Tuesday mornings. "I can do 2 Tuesdays a month." "Good," she said. "If we need more, we'll ask. You're allowed to say no." The first Tuesday, I repaired 6 torn hems and replaced a zipper in a winter coat. At noon, Gwen thanked me and told me to go home. No extra request, no guilt, no assumption that because I had given 3 hours, the rest of the day belonged to her. I went back the following week. By October, my calendar contained things that had nothing to do with my son. Supper with Ruth, workshop mornings, a concert with Elaine, who had begun calling without wedding logistics as an excuse. I missed Daniel with an ache that did not disappear simply because I was busy, but the ache no longer controlled the shape of every day. Then, 6 weeks before Thanksgiving, a large envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a printed menu, a guest list, and a seating chart for 21 people. Across the top, in Vanessa's neat type, were the words, "Thanksgiving at Margaret's." At the head of my dining table, where I had sat for 32 years, Vanessa had placed her own name. I carried the seating chart to the dining room and laid it on the table as if placing it at the scene of a crime. My name was printed to Vanessa's right. Daniel sat at the opposite end. Elaine and Martin were near him, along with Tessa, Camille, Aunt Lydia, Uncle Ray, and several relatives from both sides. The menu was more elaborate than anything I served at Thanksgiving. Roast turkey with rosemary butter, glazed ham, 3 vegetables, 2 kinds of potatoes, and individual pumpkin custards. At the bottom, in smaller type, Vanessa had added, "Margaret will provide her traditional dressing and gravy." It was comforting to know I still had a role in my own home. I called Daniel. His voicemail answered. I called Vanessa. Hers did too. I left the same message for both of them. "I received your plan. Thanksgiving will not be held at my house. Do not invite anyone here. Call me when you're ready to discuss it." Then I took the seating chart to the workshop. Gwen kept a basket beneath one table for paper patterns and scrap backing. I placed the chart inside and cut it into strips for labeling fabric donations. Ruth watched me. That looked official. It was a seating chart. For what? Thanksgiving at my house. You're having 21 people? Apparently Vanessa is. Ruth put down the shirt she was mending. Did she ask you? She assigned me the gravy. Gwen looked up from a pile of curtains. Is that a euphemism? No. Then I don't understand families. Neither do I, Ruth said. That's why I collect friends. My phone rang twice during the morning. Daniel both times. I let it ring. Not as punishment. I knew what would happen if I answered while angry. He would talk quickly. I would try to keep my voice calm. He would hear the calmness as proof that I could be persuaded. By the time we hung up, I would have agreed to provide my house, my dining table, and enough gravy to float a canoe. I finished my shift. At home, I listened to his first message. "Mom, we were going to call you tonight. Please don't overreact. Vanessa put a lot of thought into making this easier for you." The second message was shorter. "Call me." Vanessa sent an email. "I'm sorry the envelope arrived before we spoke. We wanted to preserve the family tradition without expecting you to manage everything. The meal will be mostly catered. I only listed the dressing and gravy because everyone loves yours. You would not have to host. You could relax and enjoy your own home." I read that last sentence aloud. My own home did not enjoy it either. For more than 30 years, Thanksgiving had happened at my table. Paul carved the turkey until arthritis made his hands unreliable. Then Daniel took over. People arrived through the kitchen door without knocking. Ray complained that I put celery in the dressing and ate 3 helpings anyway. It had never been elegant. Chairs came from 4 different sets. Somebody always spilled something. After Paul died, I kept hosting because changing the tradition felt like losing him again. Daniel came early to move the heavy table and stayed late to pack leftovers. The holiday belonged to all of us because we made it together. Vanessa had mistaken that belonging for a venue she could reserve. I replied to her email. "My home is not available. You and Daniel are welcome to come as my guests for Thanksgiving. If you would prefer to host, choose another location." She did not answer. By evening, I had invited Ruth, Joyce, Maribel, and Gwen. Not to prove anything, at least not entirely. They had all been discussing their holiday plans at the workshop. Joyce's sister was traveling. Maribel's cousins were gathering the following weekend. Gwen had intended to eat frozen lasagna and watch old detective shows. "Come to my house," I told them. Ruth narrowed her eyes. "Are we replacement relatives?" "No." "You're people I'd like to feed." "What do we bring? Something you actually want to eat." "Can I bring boxed stuffing?" Joyce asked. "No. Then there are limits on friendship." I planned a smaller dinner: turkey, dressing, green beans, sweet potatoes, and 1 pie instead of the usual 3. We would fit comfortably around the table without adding leaves. The following Saturday, I took my white tablecloths from the linen closet to inspect them for stains. The quilt sat on the upper shelf, exactly where I had placed it after showing Ruth. I moved it to the hall bench and carried the linens to the laundry room. Daniel knocked while I was treating an old wine stain with vinegar. He entered before I reached the door. He still had a key, and until that moment, I had never minded him using it. "Did you hear me knock?" "I was downstairs. You didn't answer your phone." "I heard the messages." He followed me into the kitchen. His face was flushed from the cold, and his hair was flattened on one side as if he had been running his hand through it. "You invited other people." "I invited guests to my Thanksgiving." "What about the family?" "You and Vanessa are invited. You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. You want the house without the woman who lives in it. That's ridiculous. The whole point was to include you. Including me would have involved speaking to me. We were going to. After the menu or after the seating chart? The seating chart was a draft. It had my name on it. Of course, it had your name on it. Beside Vanessa, who placed herself at the head of my table. He pulled out a chair and sat, pressing both palms to his face. "She was trying to take pressure off you." "By taking my chair?" "It's a chair." "No, Daniel. It's not the chair. It's the assumption. It is both of you making decisions about my time, my work, and my home, then acting confused when I remind you I exist." He dropped his hands. "You've always hosted Thanksgiving. I chose to. We thought you'd be relieved not to do all the work. Then you could have offered help. That is what we did." "No. You offered to let me relax in a house you had taken over." He stood again. Sitting had not made him calmer. "Do you hear yourself? Taken over. Disappear. Delivery service. Everything has become this huge insult. Because nothing changes when I describe it politely. What do you want us to do? Beg permission every time we ask a favor. I want you to ask before deciding. We made a mistake. You keep making the same mistake, and you keep saving every one of them." His voice struck the room and stayed there. I stared at him. He looked startled by his own volume, but he did not apologize. "You saved the gift," he continued. "You held on to it for months. You could have told me the day the hotel called, but you wanted evidence. Evidence of what? That we don't appreciate you. You didn't notice it was gone. We got married. We left the country. There were 200 people and 100 gifts. And one mother. That's not fair. Stop saying that whenever fairness becomes uncomfortable for you. He turned away, gripping the back of a chair. I could see Paul in the shape of his shoulders. Not his face this time. The way he held anger as if it were a heavy object he might drop on someone. "Where is it?" he asked. "What?" "The gift." "Why?" "I want to see what was important enough for you to turn into a secret." Before I could answer, he looked through the doorway. The quilt lay folded on the hall bench, the embroidered edge facing outward. The wedding date was visible in cream thread. Daniel went still. He walked toward it. "Is that what you made?" "Yes." He picked it up without asking. The folds opened between his hands, green and rust spilling toward the floor. "Be careful?" "I am." He spread it across the dining table. The blue square appeared in the center. His hand stopped above it. I watched recognition arrive slowly. First uncertainty, then the slight pull between his eyebrows. He touched the cloth with 2 fingers, rubbing it the way he had rubbed the expensive invitation paper. "Is this Dad's?" "Yes." "Which shirt?" "The blue work shirt." He bent closer. "The one from the hall closet?" It was in the cedar chest. His palm settled flat over the square. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "You cut it." The accusation was so unexpected that I almost smiled. "1 square. I still have the rest." He nodded without looking at me. "He wore it when we fixed the back steps. He wore it while he watched your father fix the back steps." I helped. "You held the tape measure backward." A sound escaped him, half laugh and half breath. He turned his face away. The anger left his shoulders first. He pulled out the chair and sat with one hand still resting on the shirt. His eyes filled. Daniel had cried at Paul's funeral and at his wedding, but I had never seen him try this hard not to. "What was the card?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "The hotel said there was an envelope." I told him what I had written. Not every word at first, but he asked, so I repeated it as well as I could remember. "May your home always be a place where both of you are known, welcomed, and loved as you are." When I reached the part about a piece of his old home living in the new one, Daniel covered his mouth. I stood across the table, gripping the back of my own chair. Every instinct I had told me to go to him, touch his shoulder, tell him it was all right. It was not all right. "I didn't know," he said. "I know. If I'd known what was in the box, that is not the point." His eyes lifted. "You shouldn't need to know a gift contains your father's shirt before you care that I'm carrying it." He looked back at the quilt. "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. "Don't," I said. "What am I supposed to say? Something that costs you more than those 2 words." His face tightened again, but this time he did not become defensive. I should have said something upstairs. "Yes, I heard her. I saw your face. Yes, I knew it was wrong. There it was. No stress, no misunderstanding, no wrong attachment. I didn't want Vanessa upset before the ceremony," he said, "so you chose me. I knew you wouldn't make a scene. I never do." "I know." He looked ashamed of that knowledge. "Every time I asked you to understand, I was asking you to accept what I didn't want to confront. I had wanted those words for months. Hearing them did not feel like victory. It felt like finding the correct name for an illness after it had already done damage." Daniel wiped his face with both hands. "Can I take the quilt?" "No." The answer hurt him. I saw it, but he nodded. "When?" "I don't know." He folded it badly. I had to stop myself from correcting him. When he finished, he left it on the table between us. "What happens with Thanksgiving?" he asked. "You decide. You may come here as my guest, or you may celebrate somewhere else. And the rest of the family? They are adults. They'll survive a change of address." He almost smiled. Then he looked at the quilt again. "I don't know how to fix this." For once, he did not say he was sorry. For once, I did not tell him what to do. "Start by not asking me to fix it for you," I said. Daniel left the quilt on the dining table and walked out without saying goodbye. I heard the front door close. A moment later, his car started in the driveway. The house settled around me. For several minutes, I stood where he had left me. Then I refolded the quilt, smoothing each section as I went. Daniel's folding had placed the blue square off-center and trapped one corner under itself. It was such an ordinary mistake that it nearly broke me. I carried it back to the linen closet. This time, I shut the door firmly. Vanessa called that evening. I let it ring, then listened to her message. Margaret. Daniel came home very upset. He told me about the quilt. I think we need to talk, but not tonight. I'm trying not to say something I'll regret. It was the most sensible message either of them had left me in months. I slept badly anyway. The next morning, the family group message became active at 7:20. Martin asked whether Thanksgiving was still at my house. Tessa replied that she had already ordered 2 cases of wine to be delivered there. Aunt Lydia wanted to know if she should cancel the floral arrangement. Uncle Ray sent a picture of a turkey wearing sunglasses. Daniel responded before I did. Thanksgiving will not be at Mom's. We made plans involving her home before asking her. That was our mistake. Vanessa and I will arrange another location and update everyone. I read the message 4 times. No mention of my sensitivity. No vague scheduling issue. No request that I save him by confirming it was all a misunderstanding. Tessa answered, "That doesn't sound like you." Daniel wrote, "It wasn't. It was me." I put my phone down. 10 minutes later, Vanessa called. This time I answered. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not responding to the group." I was enjoying the turkey. She did not laugh. "Daniel told me you won't give us the quilt." "Not now. It was made for our wedding." "Yes, so it belongs to us." The sentence was so thoroughly Vanessa that I almost admired it. Even hurt, she searched for the rule that would restore order. "It was intended as a gift," I said. "You never received it. Because the hotel misplaced it. Because you sent me downstairs like a courier. I apologized for that. You did. And you said thank you. That did not erase it." Her breath sharpened. "What exactly am I expected to do, Margaret? I cannot go back to the suite and say something different. No, I can't make the hotel deliver the box correctly. No, I can't force you to believe me when I say I was overwhelmed. I believe you were overwhelmed. Then what?" I sat at the kitchen table. The framed wedding photograph stood on the mantel in the next room, Daniel looking at me while I adjusted his tie. "You want a task," I said. "Something you can complete. I want to repair the situation. You want to complete the situation. What is the difference? Repair takes as long as it takes." She was quiet. I could hear a car horn somewhere on her end of the line. "Daniel thinks I humiliated you," she said. "You did. He also thinks he let me. He did. You've made that very clear." "No, he made it clear when he finally said it himself." Her voice dropped. "He came home and looked at me like I was a stranger." "I'm sorry, are you?" "Yes, I know what that feels like." That landed. For the first time, the anger went out of her breathing. "He said you put part of Paul's shirt in the center. I did. Why didn't you tell me? It was in the card. The lost card." "Yes." She was silent for so long that I thought the call had dropped. "I wouldn't have sent it downstairs if I'd known," she said. "The words were honest and exactly wrong. You still don't understand." "What?" "It should not have required a dead man's shirt to make me a person carrying a gift." Her breath caught. I regretted saying it that sharply, but I did not take it back. Vanessa whispered, "No, it shouldn't have." We ended the call without solving anything. Over the next week, Daniel and Vanessa moved Thanksgiving to Elaine and Martin's house. Elaine called me before agreeing. "I don't want you to think I'm taking their side. It's not a war. It feels like one from here. If they need somewhere to eat, let them eat. What are you doing?" "I'm having Ruth and some friends. Do you want me to come?" The offer touched me, but I knew what it would cost her. Vanessa would experience her mother choosing my table as a public verdict. Whatever was wrong between Vanessa and me did not need a jury. "No," I said. "Have Thanksgiving with your family. Your family, too. I know. It was strange how much I wanted to believe that after spending months arguing that I belonged. Aunt Lydia took the change less gracefully. She called to inform me that the florist would not refund the deposit. "You're welcome to put the arrangement in your own house," I said. "It was sized for your table. Remove some flowers." "It doesn't work that way." "I believe in you." Tessa redirected the wine to Elaine's. Uncle Ray announced that he would attend whichever meal served pie first. I told him not to make me responsible for his moral collapse. Daniel did not call again before Thanksgiving, but he sent a message asking whether he and Vanessa were still welcome. "Yes," I wrote. "As guests. Let me know by Sunday because I'm planning food." He answered before the little read symbol disappeared. "Thank you. We need to talk about it." On Sunday, he told me they would go to Elaine's. "I think Vanessa needs her family around her," he said. "That makes sense. I want to come to yours." But if I do, everybody will treat it like I chose you over her. I understood. Understanding no longer required volunteering to disappear, but sometimes the right choice still hurt. You should be with your wife. Are you sure? No. I'm sad. Go anyway. He was silent. Thank you for saying that. I'm experimenting with honesty. How's it going? Terrible. People ask follow-up questions. He laughed softly. Then he asked, "What can I bring you?" "Nothing. I mean for Thanksgiving." "I know." That sounded like a trap. It wasn't. I have what I need. He accepted the answer. That was new. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke at 6 out of habit. For years, I had needed the turkey in the oven by 7 to feed more than 20 people. The 12-pound bird in my refrigerator did not need to go in until 10. I lay in bed listening to rain tap the windows. At 7:30, someone knocked. Daniel stood on the porch, holding a paper bag and an umbrella turned inside out by the wind. "What are you doing here?" "Delivering pastries. The desk accepts deliveries." The sentence came out before I decided whether to say it. His face changed. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. "Fair." He set the bag on the porch floor. "I can leave them here." It would have been easy to punish him, easier than I expected. Instead, I opened the door wider. "Come in. You're dripping." He closed the umbrella and left it in the stand. In the kitchen, he took off his wet jacket but did not reach automatically for a coffee mug. "May I?" "You know where they are." He poured coffee for both of us. The pastries came from the bakery that made the white boxes look deceptively promising. "I told the family what happened with the dinner," he said. "I saw. Tessa thinks Vanessa wrote the message. I assumed she would. Lydia said I was airing private business. She has spent a month calling everybody about my gravy." He smiled into his cup. "I told them the wedding gift was lost." I looked up. "Why?" "Because they were saying you had become difficult for no reason. And now they think you became difficult because of a quilt. I didn't become difficult. I know." The words were quiet. He pulled at a loose edge on the paper bag. "I didn't tell them what was in it. That's ours." Ours. I did not correct him. He stayed 20 minutes. Before leaving, he asked if he could hug me. My own son asked permission to touch me, and the distance between us became something physical. I said yes. He held on longer than usual. Then he drove to Elaine's house to spend the day beside his wife. My guests arrived at noon. Joyce brought boxed stuffing despite my prohibition. Maribel brought a sweet potato dish containing enough rum to require identification. Gwen arrived with 2 bottles of wine and a table runner she had made from fabric scraps. Ruth carried a pecan pie and inspected my face before removing her coat. Did he come? For 20 minutes. Did he apologize? No. Good. That's a strange response. His apologies are cheap. Pastries cost money. We fit around the table without adding a leaf. Vanessa's printed seating chart had assigned her the head, but I did not sit there either. I put the food on the table and told everyone to choose a chair. Joyce chose the head because it was nearest the thermostat. No one gave a speech. No one photographed the food. Maribel spilled gravy on Gwen's new table runner, and Gwen poured salt over the spot while everyone shouted contradictory instructions. For a moment, the room sounded like Thanksgivings from years ago. Not the same, never the same, but alive. At 3, my phone buzzed with a message from Elaine. Happy Thanksgiving. He told everyone the truth. Vanessa is furious with him and proud of him at the same time. I think that's marriage. A photograph followed. Daniel and Vanessa stood beside a turkey on Elaine's kitchen counter. They were not touching. Daniel looked tired. Vanessa had one hand braced against the counter and the beginning of a reluctant smile on her face. I saved that picture too. Daniel called that night after my guests left. How was it? He asked. Joyce brought boxed stuffing. Was she arrested? Ruth wants her deported. He laughed. Then I asked, how was yours? Complicated. Did Uncle Ray go to both dinners? He arrived here with a piece of your pecan pie. Traitor. Daniel became quiet. Vanessa says I embarrassed her in front of the family. You did contradict her publicly. I told the truth publicly because we made the decision publicly. That probably felt new to her. It felt new to me. I rinsed a plate and set it in the rack. Are you two all right? I don't know. The answer scared me, but I refused to rush in and repair it. She thinks I'm choosing your side, he continued. I don't want a side. I know. Do you? I want to stop agreeing with whoever is most upset. That was the clearest thing he had said about himself. A week later, he came over with the correct cabinet hinge. He removed the old one, aligned the new plate, and repaired the door in 15 minutes. I opened and closed it twice. Character's gone, I said. Try not to miss it. He stayed for coffee. Not because he needed storage, a meal, or someone to wait for a delivery. He asked about the workshop and listened long enough to remember Gwen's name. When he left, he did not ask about the quilt. 3 Sundays passed that way. Short visits, small conversations, no dramatic promise. Sometimes he was defensive. Once when I said I already had plans, he answered, "Of course you do," in a tone that sent us backward for a week. But the next time he called, he asked when I was free. Vanessa did not come with him. In mid-December, she appeared at my front door alone. She held a grocery store pie in both hands. The clear plastic lid had cracked down the middle, and cherry filling was leaking into the cardboard box. I dropped it, she said. I see that. I had a speech in the car. It was better before the pie. I looked at her face. She wore no careful expression, no polite daughter-in-law smile, no evidence that she knew what the next 10 minutes would look like. I don't know how to do this without trying to control it, she said. For the first time since I had met her, Vanessa looked afraid of an open door. I stepped aside. Vanessa entered carefully, as though my hallway might contain rules she had not reviewed. She carried the damaged pie to the kitchen and placed it on the counter. Cherry filling had escaped through one corner and streaked her sleeve. Do you want coffee? I asked. Yes. No. Maybe water. That covers most beverages. I'm nervous. I noticed. I gave her a dish towel for the filling and poured 2 glasses of water. She sat at the table. Her hands remained wrapped around the glass without lifting it. I owe you an apology, she said. You've apologized. Not well. I sat across from her. She inhaled slowly. When you came into the suite with the gift, I saw you. I knew who you were. I wasn't confused, and it wasn't just that the room was crowded. I waited. Tessa had been telling me I was letting too many people interrupt the schedule. The photographer was late. Aunt Lydia had opened her gift in the middle of everything. My mother kept asking whether I'd eaten. Vanessa rubbed her thumb along the rim of the glass. Then you walked in with another thing I hadn't planned where to put. Another thing. I know how that sounds. It sounds accurate. Her eyes rose to mine. I treated you like a task because tasks don't require anything emotional from me. That does not improve it. No. She swallowed. It doesn't. The refrigerator clicked on behind us. Outside, a truck rolled slowly along the wet street. I was angry at you before you entered the room, she continued. Why? Because Daniel kept asking where you were. He wanted you with him before the ceremony. He asked whether you'd seen the cufflinks and whether you liked his suit. Every time he was nervous, he mentioned you. I thought of myself standing beside the potted palm while the Bell family took photographs. So you sent me downstairs. I wanted one moment when I was the person he needed most. You were about to become his wife. I know. Did you think there was only one chair? The question made her flinch. Her own name at the head of my Thanksgiving table had made chairs difficult territory. In my family, she said, there usually was. She told me things she had never explained during the engagement. When Elaine and Martin separated, Vanessa was in college. Tessa immediately took their father's side. Camille refused to take anyone's side and stopped attending family dinners. Elaine called Vanessa with details Vanessa did not want, and Martin used her to relay messages he was too proud to send himself. Every holiday became a negotiation about who would enter first, who would sit where, and whether liking one parent's new partner betrayed the other. Vanessa began organizing the gatherings because schedules were safer than feelings. If she decided the restaurant, the time, and the seating, no one could make her choose in the middle of dinner. Then Elaine and Martin remarried each other. They acted like the separation was a difficult year we should all stop mentioning, Vanessa said. Tessa and Camille expected me to put the family back together because I was the one who knew everyone's rules. You still do it. I know. If I arrange everything, I don't have to wait to see who chooses me. The explanation changed the light around her without changing what she had done. I could see the fear beneath the control. I could also see how often she had handed that fear to other people and called it organization. You treated my relationship with Daniel like territory, I said. Yes, and whenever he disappointed me, you could tell yourself he had chosen you. Her face tightened. I didn't ask him to ignore you. No, you just benefited when he did. That's fair. I raised an eyebrow. I hate that sentence too, she said. Daniel uses it whenever he doesn't want to admit something. I almost smiled. Vanessa looked down at the table. I did not understand what his apologies were doing. I thought he was keeping everyone calm. So did he. And you? I thought they meant he agreed with me. Didn't they? Agreement without action is decoration. She let out a quiet breath. I told him that if he had defended you in the suite, I would have been upset for 10 minutes. He said he knew. That sounded like Daniel. He could calculate the length of someone's anger and still choose the person who would remain gentle longest. Vanessa asked about the quilt. Is it still in the closet? Yes. Can I see it? I considered the request. No. Pain flashed across her face before she covered it. Okay, I'm not saying never. I understand. I don't think you do. No, she said, but I'm trying to stop pretending I understand things because I want the conversation to end. That was new too. We sat quietly. Then the damaged pie box gave a soft crackle as more filling leaked through the bottom. Vanessa looked toward it. I bought cherry because Daniel said it was your favorite. It's Ruth's favorite. Of course it is. I like cherry. But it's not your favorite. No. What is? Coconut cream. She closed her eyes. I planned an entire wedding and don't know your favorite pie. You knew my handwriting was free. Her eyes opened. For 1 second, I thought I had gone too far. Then she laughed. It came out helpless and ugly, and I laughed with her. Not because anything had been repaired. Sometimes two people laugh because the alternative is spending the rest of the afternoon defending themselves. We scraped the pie into a glass dish. It looked as though it had been in an accident, but it tasted fine. Before she left, Vanessa stood near the mantel and studied the framed photograph she had given me. I chose this one because of the way Daniel looks at you, she said. I know. No, I don't think I knew why I chose it. I liked that he looked happy. I also hated that there was a version of him in that picture I couldn't create. You're not supposed to create him. She nodded. At the door, she said, I am sorry I treated you like a delivery. I looked directly at her. Thank you. And I'm sorry I told you not to punish Daniel. That was another way of making you responsible for everyone's comfort. Thank you for that, too. She left without asking whether I forgave her. Christmas was held at Elaine and Martin's house. Vanessa called before sending any plan and asked whether I wanted to attend. The question was awkward because everyone knew I was invited, but I understood what she was practicing. Yes, I said. What can I bring? What would you like to bring? This could take all day if we're both this careful. She laughed. I made dressing. At Elaine's, the table was crowded and too warm. Martin wore a green sweater decorated with tiny embroidered martini glasses. Uncle Ray brought almonds again and passed them beneath the table during a long story from Aunt Lydia. Tessa greeted me with a kiss and said, "We're all behaving now, apparently." Before I could answer, Daniel said, "You're welcome to try." Tessa looked at him. He did not smile. The moment lasted perhaps 3 seconds. No raised voices, no ruined holiday. Tessa rolled her eyes and went to find wine. Daniel had corrected someone while the discomfort was still in the room. Vanessa heard him. She touched his arm, not to silence him, but because she had heard it too. Later, while Elaine and I packed leftovers, Vanessa walked into the kitchen carrying 3 dirty plates. "Where do you want these?" she asked her mother. Elaine pointed to the sink. Vanessa put them there. It was a very small miracle. The new year did not transform us into people who never repeated old habits. Daniel still called with requests disguised as conversation. In January, he spent 5 minutes asking about my week before mentioning that he needed a ride to the repair shop. I told him I was busy. He said, "You're always busy now." The resentment in his voice was immediate and familiar. "So ask someone else." He was silent. Then he said, "Okay." He took a taxi. The earth continued turning. Vanessa overcorrected in the opposite direction. She stopped asking me for anything, including things I would have happily done. At her birthday dinner, the hem of her sleeve came loose. She hid it under the table rather than let me pin it. "Give me your arm," I said. "I don't want you to feel used," I offered. "That's different. That's the entire point." I repaired the hem in the restaurant restroom while she stood beside the hand dryer. "You keep safety pins in your purse?" she asked. "I keep everything in my purse. There may be a smaller purse inside it." In March, she called to ask whether I would teach her to make Paul's chili for Daniel's birthday. "Teach you or make it while you watch? Teach me." She arrived with groceries and no binder. The chili took all afternoon because Vanessa measured every spice, and I cooked by shaking containers over the pot until Paul's ghost told me to stop. "How much cumin?" she asked. One more shake. "You've already shaken it 3 times. It wasn't ready." "How do you know?" "I was married to the man." She wrote down approximately 4 shakes, then crossed it out. While the chili simmered, she washed every measuring spoon and lined them beside the sink. I moved 2 out of order just to see whether she would notice. She noticed. She did not move them back. Daniel came after work. The smell reached him in the hallway and he stopped. "No way." "Your wife made it," I said. He looked at Vanessa. "Mom helped. She hovered and criticized my cumin. It needed criticism." We ate at my kitchen table. Daniel took 1 bite and closed his eyes. "It tastes like Dad's." "Not exactly," I said. Vanessa glanced at me. "Close enough for today," she said. Daniel nodded and ate a second bowl. He did not thank only me. He did not thank only her. He washed the pot afterward. Spring arrived slowly. My calendar filled with workshop shifts, suppers, concerts, and an overnight trip to see a quilt exhibition with Ruth and Gwen. Daniel asked whether I could change the trip because he wanted to visit that weekend. "No," I said. "Come the following Sunday." He did. He had begun to ask when I was free instead of announcing when he would arrive. Sometimes Vanessa joined him. Sometimes she did not. Neither arrangement felt like a message. The quilt remained in the linen closet. Every few weeks, I opened the door for towels and saw the rust-colored edge. The anger attached to it had changed. It was no longer hot. It felt heavier, sadder, mixed with affection I had never stopped carrying. In early June, Elaine and I attended an outdoor concert. During intermission, she asked whether I knew Daniel and Vanessa's first anniversary was approaching. I embroidered the date, I said. Of course you did. They're having dinner at the Ashford. I looked at her. Vanessa's idea? Daniel's. He said they should go back and remember the day accurately. That sounds dangerous. Elaine smiled. He's changed. He's changing. So is she. So am I. When I returned home that night, I took the quilt from the closet and spread it across my bed. The stitches were still straight. The blue square had not faded. Their wedding date waited along the bottom edge, marking a beginning that had not been what any of us imagined. I folded the quilt again, but I did not return it to the closet. I placed it on the cedar chest at the foot of my bed and left it there. For 3 days, I walked past the cedar chest without touching the quilt. Moving it out of the closet had felt like a decision. It turned out to be only the beginning of one. On the morning of their anniversary, Daniel called at 9. Are you busy? I have the workshop at 1. Could I come by before that? What do you need? The question came out sharper than I intended. He did not pretend not to understand. Nothing, he said. I'd like to see you. Come at 10. He arrived at 10 exactly, carrying 2 coffees in a cardboard tray. I remembered yours, he said. I looked through the little opening in the lid. The coffee was dark enough to qualify. I'm impressed, Vanessa reminded me. I'm less impressed. He smiled and followed me into the kitchen. We sat at the table. Daniel wore a blue button-down shirt and the watch Paul had given him when he graduated from college. He kept turning the paper sleeve around his coffee cup. Happy anniversary, I said. Thank you. Are you nervous about going back to the Ashford? A little. Keep your packages close. He looked at me, uncertain whether he was allowed to laugh. I let him suffer for a second. Then I smiled. He laughed quietly. Vanessa wanted to invite you to dinner. That would be strange. That's what I said. Anniversary dinners usually work better with the same number of people as the marriage. She knows. She just didn't want you to think going there was supposed to exclude you. I don't need to be included in everything. She's learning that. So am I. Daniel nodded. He turned the coffee sleeve again. Is that why you came? No. I waited. I wanted to ask about the quilt. The word hung between us without the anger that had surrounded it before. All right. I don't want to pressure you. Then don't. I'm trying not to. He looked toward the hallway but could not see the bedroom from where he sat. I've thought about what you said, he continued, that I shouldn't have needed to know what was inside the box before I cared. And you were right. You came all this way to tell me I was right. Don't enjoy it too much. I'll try. He took a breath. I kept thinking about that day in the suite. I remember seeing the box cut into your arm. I remember knowing Vanessa sounded rude. I even remember thinking I should take it from you. Why didn't you? Because she had been upset all morning. The flowers were wrong. Tessa was arguing with the photographer. Her dad had disappeared to find different cufflink studs for his shirt. Daniel rubbed his thumb over the cup lid. I knew if I contradicted her in front of everyone, she might cry or get angry, and then I'd have to deal with it. So you dealt with me. I knew you'd let me. He did not say it proudly. My whole life you made it safe to disappoint you, he said. You'd be hurt, but you'd still answer the phone. You'd still make dinner. You'd still help. I looked down at my coffee. I thought that was unconditional love. Maybe it was. But I turned it into permission. The room became very quiet. I had spent months examining Daniel's part in our arrangement. Mine was harder to hold still. I had given without stating the cost, then expected him to recognize it. I had been proud of requiring so little until little was what I received. I liked being needed, I said. After your father died, especially. Daniel's face softened. I know. No, you know now. I didn't tell you then. If you needed me, I didn't have to wonder whether you wanted me. I did want you. Sometimes. Other times you wanted chili. That can be 2 things. I laughed. He reached across the table, then stopped before touching my hand. "I'm sorry I made you prove your love by being useful. This apology was different. It named something neither of us could fix with a favor." I placed my hand beneath his. "I'm sorry I taught you that usefulness was the easiest way to love me. We sat that way for a while. Then Daniel said, 'I would like to have the quilt.' I did not answer immediately. He continued before I could. 'Not because it was made for us and therefore belongs to us.' Vanessa explained why that was a terrible thing to say. She figured it out. Elaine helped. That sounds more likely." He smiled. "I want it because you made it. Because Dad is in it. Because you intended it for the home we were beginning, even though we did a poor job making room for you in that beginning." He looked directly at me. "If the answer is still no, I'll accept it. And then? And then I'll leave without it. I'll call you next Sunday unless you tell me not to. I'll keep trying. No apology as payment. No hurt as leverage. No request for me to rescue him from the answer." I stood. "Come with me." He followed me to the bedroom. When he saw the quilt on the cedar chest, he stopped in the doorway. "You took it out a few days ago." "Why?" I was deciding. I lifted the quilt and handed it to him. He did not unfold it immediately. He held it against his chest with both arms, the way a person held something living. "May I?" "Yes." We spread it across my bed. Sunlight from the window fell over the green and rust pieces. Daniel traced the embroidered date, then placed his palm over the square from Paul's shirt. "I remember this color," he said. "Your father owned 4 blue shirts. This one was softer. He washed it every other day because he refused to admit the others were uncomfortable." Daniel smiled. "Do you still have the rest?" "In the cedar chest." "Good." He leaned closer to the quilt. "How do we wash it?" The question moved me more than I expected. "Cold water. Gentle cycle. No bleach. Dry it flat if you can, or use low heat. Vanessa will make a label." "I'm sure she will. I can hear you judging her. I'm appreciating her." He laughed. Then his face grew serious. "What was the card again?" I repeated the message. This time I remembered every word. "May your home always be a place where both of you are known, welcomed, and loved as you are." The blue square in the center came from one of your father's work shirts, Daniel. He wore it in the home where you grew up. Now a piece of that home can live in yours. "With all my love, Mom." Daniel wiped his eyes. "Will you write it again?" "I could, only if you want to." "I want to." I found a plain card in my desk. I did not try to reproduce the elegant lettering from the wedding invitation envelopes. I wrote in my ordinary hand, the one I used for grocery lists and notes taped to the refrigerator. When I finished, Daniel read it once and placed it between the folds of the quilt. "Vanessa didn't come because she said this part belonged to you and me," he said. "That was thoughtful. She also said if you gave it to us, I wasn't allowed to put it in the trunk. How are you taking it?" "Back seat. Seat belt." "Good." He folded the quilt carefully this time. Not perfectly, but carefully. At the front door, I touched his sleeve. "This does not mean everything is over." "I know. And it doesn't mean I'll start saying yes again." "I know. It's not a reward." "I know, Mom. You could sound less patient." "I've been practicing." I kissed his cheek. "Go celebrate your marriage." He carried the quilt to the car and secured it in the back seat. That evening, Vanessa sent me a photograph. The quilt was spread across their bed, the green and rust warm against the cream walls. The blue square sat at the center. Her message said, "We received it this time. Thank you." I wrote back, "Happy anniversary." Nothing changed all at once. The following Sunday, Daniel called while I was leaving for lunch with Ruth. "I thought Sundays were ours," he said, half joking. "They were never exclusively yours." "I know. Call me when you're free." "I'll call Tuesday." On Tuesday, I did. Vanessa asked to store 1 box of holiday dishes in my basement that fall. She told me exactly how long she needed the space and said I could refuse. I refused. She rented a storage locker with Tessa. At Christmas, Daniel asked whether I would make Paul's chili for 12 people. I told him I would teach him to make it. He complained about the lack of measurements, shook the cumin too cautiously, and produced something that tasted almost right. "Close enough for today," Vanessa said. We kept learning the difference between closeness and access. There were mistakes. Daniel forgot to tell me about a dinner until the afternoon it happened, then became offended when I already had plans. Vanessa corrected the position of every serving dish at Elaine's birthday before catching herself and moving one back. I volunteered to help with Aunt Lydia's anniversary party, then spent a week resenting tasks no one had assigned me because I had assigned them to myself. Change was less like a door opening and more like that cabinet hinge Daniel had replaced. Small adjustments, new holes where the old screws had stripped the wood, a door that sometimes needed lifting before it would close. When Thanksgiving approached again, Daniel called in October. "What are your plans?" he asked. "I haven't decided. Vanessa and I would like to host." "At your house?" "At our house." "How many people?" 8, maybe 10. "We're asking before inviting anyone." "Good start. We want you, Elaine and Martin, Ruth, Ray, if he promises not to bring almonds, and Vanessa's sisters." "That's more than 10. I said we were learning. I told him I would think about it." 2 days later, I called back. "I'd like to have Thanksgiving here." There was a cautious pause. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Not 21 people. Not a catered menu. No seating chart." "Can we help?" "You may come Wednesday evening to move the table and peel vegetables." "May?" "Yes, then we may." Vanessa called separately and asked what she could bring. "Coconut cream pie, that's your favorite." "It is." I wrote it down. Of course she had. Thanksgiving morning, my dining room filled slowly. Elaine brought green beans. Martin arrived wearing the martini sweater again despite his wife's objections. Ruth carried boxed stuffing in a gift bag and claimed it was a hostess present. Uncle Ray brought almonds but surrendered them at the door. Daniel and Vanessa came through the kitchen carrying the pie between them. "Where should we put this?" Vanessa asked. "On the counter?" She put it there. No one announced her as hostess. No one announced me either. We set the table together. Vanessa asked before moving a vase. Daniel found the extra chairs in the basement without asking me where they were, then returned with the wrong ones and had to go back. Elaine tasted the gravy and added salt when I wasn't looking. I saw her and let her live. At dinner, people chose their own seats. Vanessa sat beside her mother. Daniel sat across from me. Ruth took the head because she claimed proximity to the kitchen gave her emergency authority over dessert. The meal was noisy and imperfect. Tessa criticized the potatoes, then ate them. Ray told the Cincinnati story incorrectly, and I corrected it louder. Martin spilled wine on Gwen's table runner, proving some traditions survived every boundary. After dessert, I remained in my chair. That was new. Usually I stood before anyone else had finished, gathering plates and asking who wanted coffee while my own food went cold. Daniel rose and began clearing the table. "You don't have to do that," I said automatically. He looked at me. I heard the old invitation hidden inside my own words and corrected myself. "Thank you. You're welcome." Vanessa picked up 2 serving bowls, then paused beside my chair. "May I help?" "Not." "Where do you keep the containers?" "Not." We thought it would be easier if I reorganized the leftovers. Just the question. "Yes," I said. "Please." She carried the bowls into the kitchen. Daniel followed with a stack of plates. They began arguing quietly about which leftovers belonged in which container. I could have gone in. I could have solved it in 30 seconds. Instead, I stayed at the table with my coffee while Ruth told Elaine a story I had already heard twice. Through the doorway, I could see my son drying a platter. Vanessa opened the wrong cabinet, laughed, and waited while he showed her the right one. Above them, the repaired door hung straight. They did not need me every second. They had not forgotten me either. I sat in my own chair and let both things be true.